How you
Morning.
doing, Joe? All right, it's 8:02 or 8:03. Let's call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Mountain Parks Electric Directors, August 11th order. With a roll call, all the directors are here.
Justin was late, though.
Well, you know, someone's got
He-
to.
He got in my way, or I would have been here earlier.
Oh, it's gonna start like this already. I have to say, you guys are taking up for me. Okay, do we have public comments?
We do have a visitor, and I'm not sure who.
I'm Jordy McNamee. I coach high school boys soccer.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I'm just asking for some money to buy my boys some t-shirts this season. This is my second year coaching the boys team. I coached the girls team as an assistant for 6 years, and it's a tradition that we buy the boys t-shirts every year for their hard work and dedication. So I'm asking for $567 for Middle Park High School boys soccer t-shirts.
Right.
For the boys.
That request is on the agenda under emergency business.
Yes, I think we all saw a letter from you. We appreciate your dedication to coaching, and we will act on the letter. Does anyone have any questions for Jordy?
Do the girls need t-shirts too?
The girls have some bigger fundraisers or some bigger parents. So I could not speak to that, but we don't have as much money coming in with the boys.
You mentioned that you were spending the money on equipment. What sort of equipment are you getting?
We get, so our balls are pretty old. Boys and girls share a lot of the equipment, and the girls practicing in the dome in February and March when there's snow outside just kind of batters them up and pops them. And so we use most of our money on balls, and we got new goals this year. The grounds crew took their plows to our goals, so we're using the bottom side of our goal last season for boys and girls season, which isn't, it's the same dimensions, it just doesn't look the best. So a lot of our money went to goals, which was a good $6 grand.
Is there a fee from the school to play sports?
There's a fee, so it's $120 for the players to play.
For each sport or just for soccer?
For each sport, and I believe if you play all 3 sports, that third sport would be free.
What is that money used for?
I'm guessing bus transportation down to Denver and out west for games, but I cannot speak to that.
So what does it go into the general fund of the school and those buys it down?
That's a great question. Yeah. I ask our AD for money, and it doesn't go very far. I wrote a grant for our new soccer goals. That was through Grand Foundation. That's how we got our new soccer goals. Even though it was the grounds crew that broke them. So it's been a tough go at it for sure.
Do you have any estimate of how many kids pay the $120 for all the sports in the school?
I do not have an estimate of that. I know that we have 33 kids coming out, or 35 kids coming out for boys soccer this season, which out of all the spring sports, that's the most. So we got more than football, we got more than softball, volleyball. So trying to grow our program for sure.
Any other questions?
How do you see for funding this in the future? Or is it just year to year by the skin of your teeth?
It's year to year by the skin of my teeth for sure. We do some fundraising days through Ace Hardware where we go and help carry out mulch bags, trucks, do the loadouts out front, sell hot dogs and stuff. But that's the money that I kind of set aside for equipment this year. But and every year's gonna be skin to skin by my teeth. It's gonna be a grind. I think reaching out to places like this, Grand Foundation. I mean, the football team sells those Panther cards, and I think that's a great outlet for them. I'm not gonna go selling butter braids or pizzas. It's just people, I don't think received that well, but I don't want to step on football and go into their Panther cards. That's great for them, but we just haven't really found something that is going to bring in money like that. You guys have ideas? I'm open. We are struggling for sure.
Thanks, George.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to stay for the meeting. The actual discussion is going to be probably in a couple of hours. So, and we can call you, have Chris call you and let you know.
That sounds good, or Nivo works.
Okay.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good day.
Um, Yeah. Yeah. All right. Minutes of the July meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those?
I looked at them and they look darn good.
Yeah, I don't know who's doing the minutes these days. They are awfully good.
Levi and Kristen
I didn't do it
provides.
Last time.
You
I'll
were
take
on,
credit
you
for
were
you.
using
Yeah,
them,
I
but
was-
you were
okay.
on
I was
it.
in Tyler. Thank
Bryson did show us.
Yeah, yeah.
Mine does not wander in that house.
All right. Any changes, corrections? There a motion to approve them?
Move, approve.
Mark, are you seconding them? Second?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You say, just,
I have a note on there, but it is.
oh, you should be able to see it. Yeah, where is it? Usually, if you have one, it shows where it pops up on your screen. There it is.
There's in relation.
Okay, all right. The attorney report. Any questions on the attorney report? Any,
Nothing additional to offer beyond Levi's report, so.
And that's good. My notes where I have a question. Executive question.
managers and safety report.
Okay, on the CTP process, the contract termination payment process, the parties waived their right to oral arguments that were scheduled for July 26th. After they sent about 40 emails back and forth. On July 8th, the indicated members, which are Continental Divide, Highline, KC, Midwest, Morgan County, Northern Rio, Otero County, Poudre Valley, Southeast, Springer, and White River, filed a motion to requesting that the judge take judicial notice of the fact that Highline Electric serves load at both eastern and western interconnections. The various parties have now filed answers and responses to the motion, and the ALJ has not yet made a ruling on whether or not they will do that. The initial decision is expected on September 29th. It will be sent to the commission shortly after that date. I expect that the parties will file exceptions to the initial decision, so they nitpick things and explain why they think that they should be different. Tri-State,
September?
What?
September 29th?
September 29th, yes. Tri-State expects that the commission could take up to a year to accept, reject, or modify the decision. I think it's going to be a little faster than that because I think the commission has been waiting for this. So we are now waiting for the ALJ's decision, the administrative law judge. We got Liz. I'm going to try and do all of the acronyms as we go. On partial requirements, the report of contested settlement was sent to the chief judge on the 20th. Based on that, the chief judge terminated the settlement judge proceedings. Basically, there was, in his opinion, there was nothing left to do. The commission has the disputed settlement and has not made a ruling on that yet. So as we go through this, I'll pause if anybody has any questions. Just
And there's,
feel free to.
is
jump in.
there any timeline on that?
That one, I'm thinking is probably 90 days. And it was filed last month, so we probably are still at least 60 days out. The fiber update, Scott has an update of the actual construction. I'm an update on the work that we've done with Keller Heckman, our fiber attorneys. They have provided us with a final draft. Levi and I have reviewed it. They provided us with a initial final draft, which we then went over with them, and they made some changes to make it the final draft. And I expect to be able to send that to Connexon tomorrow. And we had a call yesterday with Connexon and let them know that, and they are waiting to start reviewing it. And I expect that they will have a few suggested changes to our document. So we'll go through that process once we get there. I attended the CRA managers meeting in Durango on the 31st of July through the 2nd of August. That included a joint meeting with the CRA board on August the 2nd. The managers received presentations on antitrust guidelines from Craig Johnson of CRA. That was specific to the exchange of data using CRA's listservs. The managers, the CEOs or the CFOs, the operations, they all have listservs. And this was specific to salary data that is exchanged, and that it is better to have it go through someone like Mountain States Employers Council, and they aggregate the data and don't show specific data for any one co-op. There was a significant discussion on that item. And I'm not sure where it's going to end up going at this point.
What sparked that? Mark?
Was there the last,
I know they talked about it a few
well,
times, but
Jim Herron,
there was an issue.
yeah. Jim Herron, during his tenure at Mountain View, had done alignment survey and CEO survey. And it had always been done somewhere along the line. The CRA board, and I believe it was sometime last month or at your last meeting, someone brought up that it should be CRA that's doing that and aggregating that data. And then that way, the individual utilities could not use that to pull down salaries, which that typically is not a problem. We're just trying to figure out where everybody is so that we can try and be competitive. But it came from the board, and then Craig discussed it with the managers. And as I said, there probably at least 30 minutes discussion in our meeting on that. And not necessarily wanting CRA to do it, because the same information goes to Employers Council, and it seemed to be a little bit redundant to have both do it at the same time. We had a presentation on cyber and physical security from Jessica Matlock, the CEO of La Plata, and CRA Cyber Force, which is basically the technical folks like Joe from a few of the utilities that have a committee, and they are working on cyber and other stuff. They're working on developing a recap program, which is basically the same as RESAP, except for it deals with cyber stuff. They have done three
I think three, yeah.
three audits, well, visits.
They're not-
They're not audits, visits to co-ops that at the request of the co-op, and they kind of put you through your paces on cyber security, like the RECEP does on security for linemen and the company. They want to expand that, and they're trying to get some additional co-ops to commit to that. We had committed, but we have not had ours done yet. And they are also doing a tabletop exercise at Tri-State on August the October. That's right, because if it was August the 11th, it would be today, October 11th. And they have about, I think, half a dozen to 8 co-ops that they announced at the meeting had signed up for it, and they encouraged others. The room was split about 50-50 on whether they could attend on that day, and they had a secondary day, but that secondary day does not work for Tri-State because the boardroom at Tri-State is in use. So we had a presentation from Jessica at La Plata again on electric vehicle to grid buses. They have one, and they have been using it. They kind of explain the process and how they work. They've had a problem with theirs, and it just come back that day. And I did ask the question, do they believe it's because it's vehicle to grid, or is it just an electric bus issue? And it was an electric bus issue. So it had gone back to Denver to be fixed, and had been gone for about 45 days.
Just in time for school.
Yes.
Were they able to use it for peak shaving?
That's what they have been doing. They cannot actually control the bus, but they can see it, and then they can have the school do some of the work to control it. So the way that they have set it up, the bus charges so that it is at 100% in the morning when it goes out. When the bus comes back from its morning run, they charge it to 80% because for battery cycling, it works better that way. It then goes out on the afternoon runs and then comes back, and between the peak hours that they have control of it for about a 2 to 3 hour period. And they actually control it during that whole time. So they know that they're going to hit the peak if it's within those hours. And then after that time, it's plugged in throughout the time, but then they charge it back up to 100%. So it's ready for service in the morning. They have not worked out all of the costs associated with how they share the cost and how they repay that. So that's what they are still kind of working on, because they anticipate that they're going to get more of these buses through the grant programs that are available.
Are they putting that back on the grid, or are they using it
Yes.
for their own?
Well,
You said the school handles it. So
the power during the peak hours it goes back onto the grid to shave the peak.
But controlled by the school.
It's controlled by the school, but at the direction of La Plata. So basically, La Plata has them switch it so that it feeds back into the grid during that time period.
So it's not technically control as in policy 115.
Right.
It's direction,
Yes.
Need.
yeah.
Yes.
So that's after the afternoon run.
It's, I believe, between 6 and 9 in the evening. And then after 9, it starts to recharge the battery for morning service.
How does Plata give credit to the school? Is that part that's not worked out?
That's the part that they're still working on. They are giving them some credit now, but they haven't quite figured out the exact rate. I think what they're doing is giving them credit at the wholesale power rate.
And how big a battery went between 6 to 9? How much can they send out?
It has, she said it has a relatively small battery for the bus. I think the one that we provided to West Grand actually has a larger battery in it. And that's one of the things that they're looking at, is expanding the battery, and then on the new buses having larger batteries. Also had an update from Greg Mortini with Western United on supply chain issues. They continue to be a problem. They are seeing in some areas that they're getting better. They, in anticipation of problems with transformers and other things, had placed extremely large orders and more than they would normally place to kind of tide them over. Those orders have now started to come in, but the lead time on a number of critical things that are used by their customers is still extremely long, in some cases, 52 weeks or more long. Meters are starting to become a problem. So,
Meter sockets.
yeah. Well, I don't know that there isn't anything that's a problem at this point, but some of the things that were not issues are starting to become issues. We had a presentation from Stan Miguel on and Brian Hannigan at Holy Cross on distribution grid operations. The San Miguel folks showed their data analytics that they have put in place, and to where that they can analyze the performance of their system. They have actually used it to identify transformers that they have in the field that are not being used. So, you know, somebody wants to do a development and they ask you, you come out, you put the stuff in there, you put in a transformer, and it sits there and they never do anything with it. So they've identified those and they're starting to remove those, to reuse those. And hopefully the person who had it first doesn't need it before they can put another one back in.
Is that the same thing that Laplato's doing, the same software or whatever that is? I thought
No, La Plata is working with
like
Camu. This is actually software that is, there's actually 3 different softwares that work together to do it. And we do some operational analytics, but I don't think that we're doing it as involved as they are. They had a number of grids and different reports that they get off of the 3 software systems. Now, the issue is that all 3 systems don't actually talk to each other. So they download files on a daily basis from one system and upload them into another system. It's not there, but they're working with the various vendors to try and make it more seamless and integrated. They have one software which they use for one piece of information, and they would get rid of it, but for that piece of information, because none of their other systems currently can provide that information. And Brian Hannigan talked about next gen smart meters. And he is working with somebody to where that they will put a computer chip that is basically in the band on the smart meter that allows them to do a lot of different things with the meter that the current meter manufacturer doesn't do, but with the band, they can put that on the meter and actually control meters.
So you don't necessarily need a whole new meter, you just need that band.
No, you just put that band on there,
Okay,
but the band isn't cheap.
well, yeah, well, based on the shortage of computer chips, it might not be anytime soon either.
Well, he's got, I believe he said 100 that are ordered or may have been some of them installed. And the band is actually almost as much as the meter. But it allows you to upgrade your meters without actually having to replace the meter. The last thing, 2 CEO departures were announced. DMEA, Alyssa Roberts, I think it was also in one of the CREA articles that they put out a few weeks ago. With DMEA resigned to accept a position in New Hampshire. She is actually gone and has started her position in New Hampshire. And San Luis Valley, Lauren Howard announced his resignation that will take place later this year. He didn't give a specific date.
Retired?
Yeah, he's retired.
Oh, Alyssa been there.
Just over a year.
quick turnover.
Yeah.
The New Hampshire job is a significantly larger utility.
That's a big,
Is that Green Mountain?
no.
No.
New Hampshire Electric Cooperative.
And they are in the infancy stage of broadband, and she has a lot of expertise in broadband. And the job had been out there actually for quite a while, and they had not hired anybody. And otherwise, she might not have been at DME for a year. Another issue that was raised by Grand Valley was the move of the Hotline School. That's the school in Grand Junction where all the Colorado utilities, as well as utilities from other states, send people for a week of training. We send students as well as instructors. Adam has been an instructor there. They are moving because the property that it was located on was leased property. They have owned property, and I don't know if the lease was up, but they are moving to their owned property. And they provide training and best practices for linemen. And actually, when Don and I were there for one of the CRA meetings, we went over and visited the line school, and there were 4 linemen from Alaska that were there that had come down for training. It's, I think, critical for training and a refresher for our linemen. Its focus is on safety. They also have the opportunity to utilize new equipment that is there. Vendors will provide equipment so that they can use it to test it out for the weeks that they are there. I think that it is incredibly important for not just us, but all Colorado co-ops and then co-ops in other states as well. The cost to move the operation is about $60,000. Grand Valley has contributed the first $5,000, and I would like the board to consider making a similar contribution to the Hotline School. It's basically not-for-profit, and it is run by a very small staff, and then all of the instructors come from the co-ops.
Where are they moving?
About a mile. Yeah, I mean, when you're standing in the yard where it is, you can see the other building, because on the property that they own, they have an actual physical building, and that's where they do classroom training. And then they bought pasture land basically, and they're moving the poles and lines and stuff that the guys work on. Basically, they have it set up to where it would be like one of our lines, and so they drive trucks in there, and they climb the poles, they use bucket trucks, and so they're moving it. I would say, as the crow flies, it's probably a little bit less than a mile, but at the way that you get there, you have to drive out of and down the street, turn, and then go down another street to get over there.
I'm gonna add that to the emergency business, but go ahead and ask.
Is that owned by Grand Valley, or is that tech school down there?
No, it is not owned by Grand Valley, and Mesa School does have a lineman program, but they don't own this. I believe that they have provided in the past some of the instructors, but they don't own it.
Yeah, because I thought it was true that there was a tech school down there. It's a great
Well,
program.
I could be wrong. Do you know, Adam?
Great reputation.
I believe Mesa is a big part of that. I don't know.
They stayed there. There's that other tech school down there.
But it's through the school. Co-ops utilize that facility.
It's great school.
Have we added that contribution request to the agenda?
Yep, we did. We added it under emergency business.
That's
It's not
what
on
that
your,
is.
it's not on your iPads. I just put it on my list for the agenda.
Any other questions on any of the topics at the CRA managers meeting? We will be getting the presentations, and I can send those to the board. But I had not gotten them yet. So.
Is that contribution request going out as a request from Mesa, or is this just a voluntary contribution on your part?
It would be a voluntary contribution on Mountain Park's part. They are going to, the Hotline School is actually going to put out a request. And when we were there, they asked for if we had any, equipment that we weren't using that we provided. And we have a stock of poles in Walden that have been removed from the field, and they are still
in good condition, but we won't put them back out. And so we have told them that we would donate some of those poles to them. We're going to use some of them to set up a number, kind of a school of our own, so that we can have our journeymen help the apprentices and have actually train them on some of the stuff in our own yard.
Do they charge a tuition for days attendance or anything like that?
It's real minor. It's like $150 or something like that for a student to go down there.
Supplies
And
and,
then instructors are free. to
Yeah.
go down there.
And they do provide food. And I think the cost of the school basically feeds them for the week while they're there. And the utility pays for the transportation to get their employees there, and then for housing while they're there.
would there be a way before we discuss it further later to figure out, I think more to Carl's question about where do they fit in and how with the structure of ownership?
Who would we be giving the money to exactly? Is it going to Mesa or is
Yeah.
it going to a nonprofit? That's
Yeah, is
the
it-
hotline school?
Are they an independent little part of themselves, or are they part of Mesa? Or that might help us with the discussion later on.
I can't remember this, but Tom Walsh talked to that legislator about getting money from the legislator. He kind of outlined the ownership structure of it, but it is like some kind of nonprofit.
Yeah, I think the hotline school actually is a nonprofit.
Their
Uh,
own entity.
Yeah, their own
they
entity.
are.
Okay.
The
Mesa may provide
Mesa
these services.
does, I think, utilize it as well for the training in their program.
Well, I think they were on their land, right? So that's where
Yeah.
that ties in at.
Oh,
And so they're doing some type of school expansion, it sounded like, so they're kicking them off.
Are they charging the online school now?
I don't know.
Is it the only hotline school in the state right now, or is there one?
No, it's the only one. And I
Been
think
around
it's
a long
the only one in several states, because the other states come here,
Yeah.
Nebraska,
Alaska guys
Kansas.
get that. It's been around a long time. I've really seen that.
But we can try and get that information before we get to the emergency business. Okay, the CFO search. Stacy's last day was last week. We received 10 applicants for the open position. After reviewing the applicants, we decided to interview 6 of those, and we did that the week of July 25th. Staff then selected 3 of what we believe to be the best qualified applicants for a second interview. And we did those second interviews this week, actually finished yesterday. We unanimously agreed on the top applicant. And I actually spoke to him yesterday evening and asked him to give us dates when he could come to Granby to talk a little bit more with our folks, get a chance to visit our facilities and meet more of the people that are here. Because at this point, he's met 7 of us. And gave him the option of the 23rd or 24th of August. And those dates work for him. Our hope is to have someone on staff by the middle of September. He has 15 years of experience in director of finance or CFO position. He has 16 years of investment experience. He worked on Wall Street for 12 years, worked with a large firm that does 401ks. And then he has 11 years working for international non-governmental organizations. He worked for the Peace Corps, for Save the Children, for the United Nations, and a few other things. So he's well-traveled, and he has a BS in finance. I think everybody that had the opportunity to speak to him was extremely impressed by him. I think all 6 of the original candidates could do the job. And the 3 were just farther ahead in our estimation than the others. And then he was the cream of the crop for the 3 that we had. And I have communicated to the other 2 this morning that they weren't selected, so.
He's offered the job?
What?
So he was offered the job?
He has
or-
not been offered the job. We do a 3 interview process, and the 3rd interview is that they come here and talk to people. He and his wife have come up the last 3 weekends and looked at the area. Based on conversations, housing is not an issue. And even with the high cost here, that's not going to be a problem.
So they're in Colorado, they're local.
They are in Colorado, yes. And they very much enjoy the area. And they're looking to have a place where they will build a home that will be utilized by 3 generations. They have 2 kids and 2 grandkids at this point. And his wife is actually from Bhutan. And she said that it's nice to be able to see little mountains.
Is it someone you think could stick around, or is he gonna move up here and retire in 2 years?
No, I think that he is talking about 10 years.
So we haven't got to play this game
Let's,
again, hopefully.
yeah, let's, I think we should be very general in these discussions, and if we're gonna get more specific, we need to do it in executive session. But that's exciting.
And a good turnout, 10 applicants.
Yeah.
Thanks for that effort.
In your estimation, with his background that is his, how do you feel that he'll fit in co-op financing?
I think
And what is the differences?
I don't think he's going to have any issues with co-op financing. And in fact, he may bring some additional ideas on ways that we can access financing. He has experience working with many different types of organizations. And one of the non-governmental organizations is actually here in Colorado as well. So I think he has been able to move across various industries and fields with no issues. So I think that he will hit the ground running here and be very good if we are able to offer him the position and he accepts.
It seems like 10 applications is a pretty good response.
It was more than I had expected. And that was basically, we received those 10 within the first week. After we had started the interviews, we received 1 additional application, but we chose not to review that one because it was after the process had already started.
And you listed that without a headhunter, just on that.
Yeah, we used cooperative.com and then shared with the other co-ops, although to my knowledge, none of the applicants were referred to us by another Colorado co-op. Okay, moving on, the Tri-State Managers Meeting, I attended that virtually on August the 8th. I don't know if they actually had an in-person option, but Dwayne Hiley talked about 3 issues. The first was Tri-State and United are having settlement discussions. The effort of the discussions would be to settle all outstanding legal issues, which would include the CTP, the BDP or buy down payment, which is partial requirements, Adams County lawsuit, and then another Colorado matter, which he wasn't specific about what that was. I could provide more specifics about what we discussed with him in executive session, but the gist of the discussions is something tailored along the lines of the partial requirement settlement and a phased approach over time. And the phased approach would be to try and match Tri-State's need to build additional generation with the departure of members.
Sorry, can you clarify a little bit? So the United is potentially talking about staying and doing a partial requirements or?
No,
Okay,
No, and I can go into more detail in executive session.
They're just in talks.
They're talking
Well,
to try
maybe.
and settle the legal issues around all three of those things. He also talked about the increased asset retirement obligation, or ARO, for one of the mines due to a natural spring that was on site that will now have to be treated because in the reclamation process, they breached the spring, underground spring. It adds $40 million to the ARO. And he indicated that the board had approved an additional amount of deferred revenue to help cover the obligation. And Carl may talk about that in his report. He talked about the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 and the fact that there is $9.7 billion for electric cooperatives in it. The Senate approved the bill over the weekend, and it was expected that the House would approve it later in the week. They may have already done so. Tri-State is in discussions with USDA on how the rules will be written to utilize the funds. And then the last item, and I may have said that there were three, but there were actually four. The last item was a discussion on resource adequacy. Now, that wasn't, I think, on his original agenda. It was added as a result of a question. And that was also a topic at the joint managers board meeting in Durango. And legislation, or the lack thereof, related to resource adequacy and what the position of CREA should be. And a Tri-State representative was at that meeting and shared Tri-State's point of view. I think there was some misunderstanding based on that meeting, and Dwayne cleared up for the managers what Tri-State's position was on it. And just Tri-State believes that, and I think CREA does as well, that there shouldn't be a regional approach to it, that it should be a national solution and not a state-by-state solution to resource adequacy, that it should be addressed at the national level instead of by each state, so that you end up with.
I'm sure Texas will like that.
I'm sure that they will. And they'll probably lead the charge on that.
Well, given that we import more energy into the state, it doesn't, for the state to have that law in place, this doesn't make sense. Just all it takes is one bad apple outside of the state.
Yeah.
And then, we got an issue, so.
Yeah, well, especially with the RTO. It's hard to imagine how the RTO, anything, the RTO has.
That's why it really needs to be a national, and to be something that FERC addresses. So.
And that was one of the things too that both series opposed to it, is that, could create problems for the RTO, which is scheduled to go into,
2025.
Yeah. So, and then I guess a few key legislators don't like the idea either, of resource adequacy bill, that they feel as well that it get in the way of the RTO, complicate the mix of it for someone else. It's pretty complicated.
Yes.
An interesting topic.
But, I think, California could write it down, but so could Texas. And I think, but those people who live in those states really would like to have an adequate supply of electricity when it's cold or really hot. And
Both very good times to have electricity.
yeah, and some of them haven't had that. So who's gonna ensure that they do? Yeah, maybe it's national.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, Excel's come out and said that they feel like they're going to have to be the provider of last resort if something was to happen to the grid. Serious kind of looked at that saying, well, where did that come from?
They weren't the last time.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
weren't the last time. Yeah, I was
You
gonna
know.
say. Yeah.
So if there are any specific questions about any of those,
I can add a little color to your last discussion here. Dwayne met with the Western Governors Conference. I think it was in Idaho somewhere, but he met with Polis and Wyoming. Meade, is it not Meade?
The governor from their means.
Governor of Wyoming, Gordon.
No.
Anyway,
The governor.
Polis is gonna be the chairman next year, and then Governor of Wyoming the year after. But with all of the projects that Tri-State has signed contracts for, solar projects, are probably not gonna happen because they have raised their prices to compensate for the panels and whatnot that they can't get. And they're raising their prices above what coal generation is, right? So there's a discussion about what obligation they have to Tri-State because they put down some bonds to honor the contract. Whether it's cheaper for them to just walk away or not. But Polis, Dwayne has brought the idea to Polis that possibly they can extend the close down date past 2/29 for the break station because of this issue. So don't know where all of that's going to go, but it relates to having adequate power in the state. But there's a big issue with the solar farms.
Well, and one of the things that was brought up at the CREA meeting is that California has asked PGE to extend the life of the Diablo nuclear power plant because it was scheduled to close. And what they've figured out is that if it closes, they have a problem. And they were in the process of planning that, but they want them to extend its life for another 2 years.
Well, I think that also in that, whatever Inflation Reduction Act, there's money to extend the lives of nuclear plants across the country. Significant money
Right.
to pay.
There's also
Operators.
$25 per megawatt hour for renewable energy. And so I think we need to hear from Tri-State about how that's going to affect the pricing that's being offered
Right.
on the solar projects, because that's a significant chunk of change.
Well,
Alter the economics.
projects, the companies that are building, raising the prices almost double.
Right.
Sometimes more.
But this act hasn't passed yet, so
Right.
Tri-State
It
will have to
hasn't passed.
negotiate when it finally does pass and get signed to see if they can honor their original prices.
Well, they've signed a partial or a possible agreement with a 200 megawatt solar farm at Escalante in New Mexico. But it has raised it up to like close to $30 megawatt cost. But they're confident that they can make that work
Yeah.
down there. because-
$30 a megawatt hour minus 25 is only $5 a megawatt hour. And that's
Well,
it starts to
most of the
sound like a
bids
deal.
on these projects were around 18,
Yeah.
15 to $18.
Yeah.
So who's
That's
paying
why
the
you-
25? That's
Yeah, the federal government, and it's direct pay too. So like if we as a cooperative wanted to pursue renewable energy, we would get 25 direct pay. So you don't have to partner with someone that has tax liability anymore. That's the big deal for the co-ops.
Well, it's an issue, so.
Well, I think there's a lot of, if that bill passes the House, there's a lot of sort of understanding the implications and what the rules are going to be. But it does, it is kind of a game changer and given the supply chain issues, but still, or the costs that are going up, but we still have to get, whoever's doing the projects has to get the stuff.
Right.
So. okay.
So everybody backing out of this Tri-State, how does this affect the crossover or new potential clients? It's happened to them, has it happened all with supply deals? Those guys promised us the sun, the moon, the Rocky Mountains.
It's happening all over the.
Yeah, it's not gonna Tri-State, but our new
Well, But
potential.
I think we still have, because of what happened with the settlement for the buy down payments, we can speculate all day long about what's going to happen in the next year. But we're not going to, it's speculation. There's a lot of uncertainty right now and a lot of complexity, and that's We're just gonna have to wait until we have a little more.
It is.
Well, we're gonna have to wait till, if there is no buy down process or buyout process, it goes back to what they had. We're not gonna do this anyway. We can't. But, so we're gonna wait on FERC, I think, and then we'll try to see what the pricing is. Yes, that's.
Never hit.
Yeah. I just say that from the rate design committee meetings. I mean, it was the same thing. It's like, how can we make a decision when we don't know any of these pieces? You do the best you can, but we don't have to make a decision right now.
Okay, Winter Park Land, Liz provided a link to board members on Sky article from August 5th. It was initiated by one of our members. If you read the article, you'll figure out who. The reporter contacted me the week of August 1st for an interview on the topic, the sale of our Winter Park land. And we spent about 30 to 40 minutes on the phone. And I think he did a pretty good job. It was a very balanced article, and he actually went out and did a lot of research. Even talked to the Corps about it because he had a conversation with them. I suggested that he talk to them a little bit more, and I think he did based on the article. I was contacted by our real estate agent on the 8th, so yesterday, however many days ago it was, and there was a notified that a potential buyer with their agent walked the property on the 7th, and the buyer was conducting some due diligence but had not made an offer. That was yesterday. Today, they have made an offer. Actually, last night, like, they made an offer. They actually made 2 offers, and we will discuss them in executive session because each offer has different levels of contingencies associated with it. And the last item that I had is a reminder that today at lunch, when we break, we will go into the fleet garage, and we're going to honor Dick Zeef for his 19 years of service. And so lunch will be in there, barbecue, and then we have a gift for Mr. Zeef. With that, my report is done unless there are any questions.
And Sky High did a nice job that they referenced the article
Previous, yes.
the
The
Mountain
housing.
Parks property, Mountain Park property a year ago or
Yes.
a year and a half ago.
Some good advertising, maybe.
Yeah.
2.7 acres.
It was a nice
One
article.
Page advertising.
Okay, if there are no other questions, you have the safety report in the packet. There were no accidents, incidents, near misses, or damage reports. Adam is here. Adam White, I think we introduced him last month, and if you have any questions, I'm sure he would love to answer the questions related to the report. We are starting to have some issues because we have Adam White, Adam Paulson, and Adam Walker. And so we are just referring to them by their last name. What do you want to,
Yeah, what have you been focusing on?
you want to talk a little bit about the active shooter training and your visit yesterday?
Yes, when I came in on the safety committee, I've been bird dog and an active shooter class training for some of the faculty up front, stuff like that over the last few months. And so I met with the Nate McEwen out of the sheriff's office yesterday, came out and did a little visit, took around the facility, and we're actually going to do an in-person training next Thursday for our staff here in the office. We also kind of, we're going to partner with the sheriff's office. They're going to start doing more of this, I guess, in the community just in general. They used to do it about 5 years ago. It's unfortunate because that's kind of the way we have to live these days. You know, things happen like that. So yeah, it should be really good training. It's a PowerPoint plus a hands-on where they bring on some smaller groups and actually do a simulation if somebody was to come in and do some bad things. And so I think it's going to be really good for that. And then we'll do another training in 2 weeks for the line crew and warehouse too. That way they kind of have an idea also. And then a few other things, the highlights on these slides. I'm not going to read through all the bullets, but since I came here, we did a fire drill last month and been one down here in a while. So, I'm focusing on certain things to get people engaged in safety here and understanding kind of what that's all about. We also went to, when I say we, Adam Paulson, Drew Christensen, and I went to the CREA Safety and Loss Annual Summit last month. Some really good speakers there. I've got some good information to bring back to the line workers about some FR stuff and things of that nature. So that was good. And then, that last slide, this safety agenda for August, the active shooter training, doing mock precepts throughout the facilities. Because they're still on the list to get one from CREA sometime this year. I know they're a little backed up, but it's still going to happen. So we're trying to prepare for that. And for me personally, just to get out and do more field observations and get to know the guys out in the field and the remote sites like that.
Any questions for White Adam?
I guess you're also looking into ABD and altitude, some of our subcontractors.
Yeah. In fact,
You
the
visit all
Highway
those guys.
125 project, we had a little safety stand down on Tuesday because they started to mobilize. They've got their stuff set up. They're going to be doing the main work for us as far as burying the cable and stuff like that. So Scott Sessions, myself, Jared, and Gabe went out and had a little safety stand there with those guys because that's going to be a lot of stuff going on in that project. It's the terrain is pretty wicked. Mudslides are an issue. Traffic control. CDOT's going to be out there doing some stuff. So you've got a lot of simultaneous operations happening, and then you've got a difficult project with trying to bury the cable in restricted areas. So we'll be out there quite a bit to work with those guys, and then I think Altitude will start doing their thing in the next few weeks. They're going to be actually doing the pole removal via helicopter and stuff like that. So that should be interesting as well.
And Altitude did hire a safety manager, happened to be the director at CREA, but he is now overseeing safety for Altitude for their whole organization, not just in Colorado. If there are no other questions.
Do we have a
to
motion
accept.
to accept
Move to
them?
accept the safety report.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, do we want to take a quick break before we get into discussion? Anyone need a break?
So it's still 12 minutes
Who
to 8.
seconded that?
That clock is
God,
not-
we're
Carl
so
seconded.
efficient. Yeah.
I'll try to say.
Take a break.
Yep, let's take a, get everybody up for a 5-minute break. 9:05 we're starting. 9:10, okay, 9:10. loan resolution. I
We
spoke
are
up.
postponing that until September.
Yeah.
We still don't have the documents. We think we're close, but we thought we were close a couple of times. And so that hopefully will happen in September.
Okay,
And B3, the one that never gets done, this is the month. In your packet, you have the latest version of B3 with the edits that Levi put in there. And you may recall that one of the challenges for us was,
we want to have some of this in executive session.
If we're gonna get
If
into.
we're gonna get
Bill-
into-
Bill
to-
Miller's detailed analysis.
I was not, unless
Okay,
unless
okay.
somebody wanted to know specifically what they said.
Yeah, that part would be an executive session, but
I would
otherwise
like
I'm
to
okay.
know.
Yeah.
We can't know.
Uh,
Well,
So part of this gets into some
Yeah.
legal issues, and I just want to make sure that we don't discuss them.
um,
But if they're.
we had
go
we had a call last week with the auditor. He provided me with a written explanation, but they do not have a problem with the changes that we are proposing to make. And if we want to postpone this and talk about it in executive session, I can actually tell you exactly what he said.
I think that if people have general comments that don't have to do with, or questions that don't have to do with section 2B1, then we could talk about them here. That'd be perfectly appropriate. But if.
Why is it not appropriate to talk about a major change that perhaps removes information from members?
Well, I think if we want, I think we should talk about the risks of the different approaches in executive session.
I agree with,
don't-
oh, go ahead.
I don't necessarily, I think you're right, and there is a concern about transparency. And
Yeah, I was gonna say, so a couple approaches you could take. If you want to hear the detailed analysis, you could take action now based on the recommendation from the auditor who said they're okay with these changes. You could postpone action until after you've had that discussion in executive session and come out. Either's fine, but I agree with Liz that detailed discussion should happen in executive session.
I'd rather wait then. If we're gonna-
Yeah,
yeah, let's talk about it in an executive session, the detailed discussion, but then I do think that, your point about transparency is a good one.
yeah.
So,
I mean,
Yeah.
for the record, our policy currently says that we tell members what their capital credits are each year, and it's proposing to change that. That's-
I agree with Kristen. This new law that they passed has shoved everything to executive session and out of the minds and knowledge of our membership. So I think that more things need to be discussed in open session than we're doing now, but that's my opinion.
Point taken.
I mean, I don't feel that I do anything here that the membership shouldn't know. Just like you telling me when I was talking to Mark about it being streamed. So what? I mean, I'm not trying to say something that the membership should know. So anyway, that's just my.
Well, and I think that with the auditor's recommendation or opinion, that Bryson is then going to provide legal advice potentially provide legal advice to the board. And that's why that piece of it is an executive session. When you come out and you vote on it, you can,
Discuss
I
it
think
all you want,
discuss all you
except
want.
for not discuss his legal advice.
Yeah, I mean, you do give up your privilege to that legal advice if you discuss it in open session, so. Yeah, that's right.
And potential litigation.
Yeah.
or-
Which is sort of why okay. So let's table this until we discuss the detailed auditors letter and the legal advice in executive session.
So that moves us to policy B16, workflow procedures, purchasing. You have that in your packet. It is basically 2 pages, and there are some edits from Levi.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on policy B16?
Make a motion to accept policy B16 with the changes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
That brings us to B17, the information and cybersecurity policy. It is 3 pages, and there are edits in there as well.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on policy B17?
It looks like it's kind of some housekeeping, but also spreads the responsibility to the IT director. And is that the logic there? Because the IT director is more knowledgeable on some of these aspects than other staff, executive staff?
Well, all staff are responsible for security, either cyber or physical. And we provide training and resources to make sure that they understand their responsibility. But Joe is the one that is primarily responsible behind the scenes and making sure that we as an organization do the things that are best practices to ensure that we are as safe as possible. In our interviews with the CFO candidates, one of Joe's questions referenced a quote that says that the only safe system is an unusable system. And so, there is that balance between usability and being able to make the system work and the risk associated with a cyber attack of some kind. So Joe is primarily the person responsible for that, and I work closely with him. But everybody within the organization has a responsibility related to cyber.
Joe's the fall guy. Something goes bad while we blame him.
No, if something goes wrong, I'm the fall guy, because Joe would have discussed it with me, and if I said, let's not do that, then it's my responsibility.
And we're given IT management a little stronger foothold
Yes,
with this policy, which seems appropriate. Because that's where the knowledge is. Even though you're the bottom line.
I wondered if under the objective, it says the directors recognize the need to protect MPE. I wondered if it should just say Mountain Parks Electric recognizes the need to protect itself, but.
well, this is a
Director's
board policy,
It's a
and
director's
so
policy, so
I
that's
think-
why that's in there.
you understand it, and as a result, you give the responsibility to us to make it happen.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I'll make a motion to approve B17 as presented.
Mark Bolt, Justin moved, Mark Bolt seconded. All in favor? Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
We'll make a motion for
Justin?
B3. Or
B16.
Carl.
Carl.
B16.
Yeah, Carl, and then Craig second.
Okay, the board fiduciary presentation, we're going to have an executive session. Okay, the education fund. I actually put that on the agenda because for a couple of reasons. One is we have about $170,000 more this year going into the education fund than we did in prior years. And I wanted to talk a little bit about whether you think the approach we're doing now is the right one, or whether people would like to solicit the school. We used to have a process where the schools would apply, and we haven't done that for a while. There might be some other ideas on scholarships or whatever. I wanted to get your take on how that's working. And then I took a look and looked at the last 3 years, 4 years really, because we have what we have this year. How much patronage capital was forfeited and moved into the educational trust, and also what the expenses, annual expenses were like in 2019. We're at about 235,000, 36,000 in disbursements. Year of COVID, we were almost up to 400,000. Last year, we were at 315,000. And so it was good for me to go back and look and see at all the different things that fund has done for the community, but just an opportunity for you guys to think about what you'd like it used for.
I do have one question. You know, everyone knows that the cost of education and college have gone way up over the last couple of decades. I'm not sure how long we've been doing scholarships, but since we started doing scholarships, have we checked that our scholarships are keeping up with education inflation costs?
Good question.
Because if, you know,
We have
If they haven't.
increased the amount that we give in scholarships. Some of them are still the same amount. Some of them are actually more than what we had done in the past, and we do more scholarships than we have done. I think
Two-year
When-
scholarships, not two.
Yeah, when I did the article, I don't remember which monthly magazine it was, but the first year that we did scholarships, it was less than $10,000. And this last year, we gave
67, 78.
70,000.
To your question, the amount, some of it has increased, I believe. We gave for scholarships for some years. Some of those now are $2,500, $1,000. But you're correct. Educate probably significant more
I would just ask the board if you'd consider keeping those scholarships adjusted for inflation in our education to make sure that we're keeping them as potent as they were when we started them.
I've been in a cycle for the high school schools to submit.
I don't know if we've done that for that.
Well, when certain things have come up, like for instance, the LED, which you will hopefully ratify in your decision here shortly, we then reach out to the other schools. When we did the last year, the upgrade to the filters, we reached out to the other schools. So one will ask and we'll ask others. When we did the buses, we reached out to the other schools. We had the requests for pre-K support from one of the providers in the area. And we then reached out to the other providers to see what needs that they had. So typically when we have a school that asks for something, we also reach out to the other schools to see if they have a similar need or something similar. And so I think that although we don't,
We used to solicit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
We
think
used to-
we
used
decided
to-
we didn't enjoy doing that process.
Right.
Because they're adding items into their general fund, there's like, and then they're spending it elsewhere. Remember the one school
Yeah.
didn't do any of
Christian
the stuff that they
school
said they were going to.
a different way. I mean, if that's something we think, you know, if we wanted to sort of solicit more applications or more, you know, have people be more aware that this money is here.
I
It
think
seems
that,
like they do though.
Yeah.
Because we got the
Yeah.
soccer coach in
right,
here.
all of the schools are very aware of this funding source. And when something comes up that is not covered by their budget, last month with the LED lights, I think it was the administrator came in and said, well, no, it's not in the budget. So if we don't get the money, we won't do it.
Yeah, and she also was like, we have another $30,000 we'd like to do. But she clearly didn't feel like it was appropriate to just show up and ask for $30,000, where is, I think we gave North Park close to 100 grand one year just so they could get all their computers rolled out. But that was using that formal process that Justin talked about. So I think we're in a little bit of a gray area of
So the education fund is scholarships and assistance.
driver's ed
The school
and
bus for West Green.
we have the parental resilience we funded last year. And I'm not sure how that.
It was a
Yeah, we need
program
to
that was,
follow up.
it was an education program.
An education program for parents, to help parents navigate getting their kids to school. We did a bunch
Preschool.
preschool.
$5,000 to each preschool.
Okay.
I think it was that, to each
Yeah.
preschool
And
establishment.
Well, and then we,
After hours
the
thing.
board did do,
Right, yeah.
I think it was Grand Beginnings,
Yeah,
and
45.
40, yes, and then we got a match of that contribution from Basin Electric. So it's over a 5-year period that they get those funds. So the fund is primarily related to education, but it is community development is a part of it. And so it has as our learned legal counsel has told us on a number of occasions, it has broad discretion for the board. But I think most of the things have been related in one way or another to a school activity.
In
Or
20,
an emergency.
yeah, in
Yes.
an emergency in 2020, it donated 190,000 towards energy costs for businesses and residents during the COVID. thing.
So when we return capital credits, basically the share of profits that members are allocated each year, we hold on to that for a number of decades, and then we give that money without interest back. And if people are gone or deceased and don't claim those,
Right.
the money gets placed into the education fund for community benefit purposes.
That's why we need to be more current on giving away capital credits or
Yeah.
bringing them up to date, because a lot of those people have moved away and you can't find an address, but it's their money, it's not our money. And so
The
but if we
newspaper
make
isn't
it
big
our
enough to
money,
publish all the names.
Well, it's available on our website too, but most people don't go back to look.
Yeah.
The state typically has unclaimed, monies, and you can go and actually there's even commercial companies that will help you go and search your name on all 50 states to see how much money you have that's just sitting there waiting for you.
Well, and to Carl's point too, so maybe Craig so if we don't do anything with that money, it's just, it's a cheat. It's
cheated, yes. It goes back to the
It's
state.
the state.
Yeah.
So it'd be there, going there.
And we've since adjusted, so we're trying when people leave here to try to have them cash their capital credits out at the time.
So we catch them.
But the board has not made a final decision on that yet. So.
I give you my 2 cents worth on this. I'm in agreement. I think that the cost of education is getting out of sight. I'm not sure the education they're getting is worth what they're paying for, but that's a different subject. But I would be more in favor of raising the amounts to the scholarship fund than giving away money to the soccer club without any accountability of what money they're getting right now. And that's why we originally put out the notice to the schools that we're giving away, or we're taking applications for what your needs are, but come make a presentation to us, prove to us, and let us ask you questions about why you need this money and why you can't provide it yourselves. And it worked good, except that in the initial years, the North Park School District did the best job of making the presentations that was mentioned early. And East and West Grand didn't do nothing hardly. They were terrible about putting together any kind of presentation to justify what they want. So I'd like to see more money go into the scholarship fund, and raising that up to where it's meaningful to students that want to go to higher education. Then buying shirts for the soccer club. In my mind, I think we're getting to be a easy giveaway that, well, go to Mountain Parks, they'll give you money. And I realize that if we don't do something with it, it's going back to the state. But also I like accountability, so that's my 2 cents.
And Carl, when you say higher education, to me, too, that means we really need to be funding the trades.
Well,
Yeah.
there's
Well, the trade,
scholarships as
I'm talking
well.
about-
Yeah.
Yeah, and I consider vocational training higher education.
Good.
Lineman school or
Exactly.
whatever, plumber school, I don't care. Whatever. it is,
Continuing
they-
education.
Yes, there you go, that's a better term.
Any other thoughts?
No, I mean, I like the trade school approach too.
How could we increase that? That's,
I mean, if we can.
we try
tie
to get an
somebody-
electrician plumber. We need some working tradesmen.
But, and specifically the Mountain Parks Electric, I mean, if somebody comes back here and does their apprenticeship at the school or at Mountain Parks or something, again, maybe their parents live here, we have built-in housing and those, and we have quite a, where we have had a number of folks that work at Mountain Parks Electric in all from a CSR to linemen that grew up here. And they're tied to the community and the longevity of, this co-op. And so I don't know, I would put a higher emphasis on that than somebody that.
Is there a college versus apprentice? Are they separated?
No, we have,
Yes, but we have done trade scholarships as well as we have a lineman that is currently an apprentice with us that we are paying in 3 increments the cost for him to have attended line school. And we have an intern this year and for how much longer? The end of August.
Yeah, it's all school starts.
Yeah. And he will be a senior in high school this year. And had the opportunity to take him to lunch with the new employees and ask him if he thought this was something he wanted to do. And he said yes. And so, that it will be an opportunity for us because he grew up here. If he goes to line school and he comes back and works for us, that's, we're creating a pipeline of employees, basically.
How about if we put out a notice of full ride for any high school senior that wants to go to lineman school? Maybe that might entice somebody to make that decision over going to college, because how many kids really know what the hell they want to do? And how many actually do what they went to college for after they get out? So
Well,
why can't we just advertise a
Well-
full ride scholarship for a senior that would go to lineman school?
And I think some of that is we have limited capacity to be able to absorb the apprentices once they graduate. And so what we are trying to do, we did it last year and we're doing it this year. We're trying to identify students that are interested in it. We bring them in as interns and we pay them as interns. And they get the opportunity to see what it is that linemen do and be with the crews. And that helps them to make that decision. Now, they may not go to become a lineman. They may go to become an electrician or something else that's within the community. But it gives them that opportunity. And then if they, let us know that that's what they want to do, then we will work to get them a scholarship to help them with line school. And what we did with the first young man who grew up here and actually is the son of one of our employees, he went through it and then came back and, we would do something similar so that over time we would pay them the full cost of going to line school. There's a payment up front when they come. There's a payment after they have been here. And that the apprenticeship program to actually work for us is 4 years. And so if we were to put something out like that and we were to pay for 4 or 5 guys to go or gals to become linemen, the problem is we don't have the capacity to.
But we're helping the system. I mean, ideal if they come back to us because we sponsor them, but we're helping the system in total by providing that service to Mountain View or La Plata or whatever.
How much is it to go to Lyman School?
$21,000.
Per year or total?
Well, it's a year. And so it's $21,000.
What's support doing a full ride?
Well,
Every other
and
year or
we
something?
did for the young man that works for us now. And actually at the annual meeting, he was on one of the panels. We are giving him basically a full ride. We're reimbursing him the cost. And then there are additional costs for us as apprentice, that we do pay as well. Because there are books that they have to go through in that 4 years and we pay for all of the books. And that's another $2,000.
Do we have enough emphasis on, we have the college scholarships, the lineman program, but just, and I think Justin or Mark both hit on it, just plain tradesmen.
We have
The
trade.
carpenter,
trade scholarships.
We gave a
carpenter,
scholarship for a guy to
plumber.
go get his hairstyling degree once.
Yeah.
It's.
But do we have a
don't
pretty good
discriminate.
emphasis on that? And can we
Let's-
increase that?
Let's take, maybe we should take a little look at the scholarship programs and talk about that the next in September. And we can discuss if we need to add some additional scholarships. We can talk about whether we should increase the amount, whether we're gonna just give 1 or 2 full ride scholarships to Lyman School, regardless of who, now, only for kids in our territory, right?
For sure.
Okay, just checking. But yeah, we'll spend a little more time.
And to
On
use
that.
the fund for anything outside your territory would require a bylaw. amendment. That's one of your
I'm just
bylaw
wondering,
limitations.
I'm wondering if,
Well, it could be children of members.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and they
But-
need not necessarily, only go to school here. So I think that's one of the.
well, I guess
nuances.
one of
It's like-
my concern, I think about it, I think we have members who have children who don't live here. They have meters here. Are their kids going to be able to get a full ride scholarship to Lyman School? So I
Well-
guess that's where I was going with that question.
And the other thing that the board, I think, needs to have in their toolbox is that we have given scholarships to individual students who get a full ride scholarship from the school. And then that scholarship comes back and we give that to someone else.
I think there are the kids at the very top of classes who will get scholarships and they will get our scholarship as well. And so then you wonder, are we meeting the need and,
Yeah, if you have the chance, most of the high schools do a scholarship night or a award night. And you go and you sit there and some of the kids spend a lot of time, they get a lot of steps walking back and forth because we give them scholarships and pretty much everybody that's there gives one of those kids a scholarship.
yeah.
So I think that,
Is there a middle group? Is there a next tier that would benefit, that giving a scholarship would make a huge impact on their lives? That's kind of the stuff that I'm thinking about is like, okay, what do we spend these dollars on that makes a huge impact on somebody's life?
For September, maybe we could have a breakdown of the last couple of years on what's college, what's trade,
Yeah.
and what's Mountain Parks lineman apprentice specific, and then we kind of know,
well,
Where
that the alignment specific is easy because we've done it
Yeah.
once.
yeah.
Okay,
Well, Trades have only been 2 years now.
Yeah.
And I think on your agenda for consideration would be looking at the bylaws and the issue that you brought up, Liz, because as stated right now, the use is limited, the promotion of education and or public welfare of persons residing within or projects within the service area of the cooperative. Typically, you can look at that 2 ways. You can look at education just being separate from the geographic limitation, or if you want to expand out, you may consider revising your bylaws to be more liberal. But that's a policy decision for y'all. I just think it's worth consideration given the limitations stated in the bylaws.
So residents versus members.
Yeah,
The good news is, it seems like everyone is in consensus that we should increase disbursement in a meaningful and impactful way, and everyone seems to think that scholarships are a good way to do that.
And I like the pre-K funding myself.
Yep.
Just,
Yeah.
I don't, I just see that need. I know that there's a lot of young kids there.
Pre-K scholarships. I guess
Well,
there's not much to judge their scholarship on yet.
Yeah, we typically give the money to the school or facility, and they then utilize that sometimes for scholarships for parents that can't afford to send their
Well,
child there.
I think we did two things. We did that, and then I think a little bit of that Grand Beginnings money also went to some sort of needs-based
Yes.
assistance, whether it's what percentage, I don't know. That's huge. So, yeah, keeping that going.
That would move us to the ratification section. of our
Okay,
agenda.
and what I was hoping we could do is have someone, well, it could be me even, read the actual out loud. Let's see. I'm going to ask for a motion that approves the actions taken at the June 9th, 2022 regular meeting. 1, the election of Mountain Parks electric officers. 2, the election of Mountain Parks electric Western United representative. 3, approve the special meeting of the directors to be held August 23rd, 2022. And 4, the MPEI shareholder consent for Mountain Park Services director election. Could I have a motion approving ratification of those decisions?
So moved.
and you might recommend that you do as those actions are stated in the approved. minutes.
As those actions are stated in the approved minutes.
Yeah.
So moved.
Clarification, did
Yes.
the August 16th meeting
It is, but
get
that's
switched to the August?
That's the second.
That's the second one.
It
That's
was
the second
changed the
one.
next month.
Yeah, so we're doing the June meeting
But you're ratifying the decisions that
we made
they
in
made.
June. So, yeah.
Carl, get there to the
Yes.
16th.
Carl,
Okay.
who seconded?
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, now to Praise Point. Could I have a motion to approve the actions taken from the July 14th, 2022 regular meeting? The West Grand School District's request, well, granting the West Grand School District's request contribution to purchase of LED bulbs, the selection of Mountain Parks Electric Western United alternate representative, and rescheduling the August 23rd, 2022 special meeting to August 16th, 2022, as stated in the July approved July minutes. Who wants to
Meeting,
move?
are we moving?
You weren't there, so
I know I was. What meeting are we moving?
we're moving the meeting, some of the actions that were taken during the
Well, no, but
meeting. You
the
weren't
meeting that
in July.
it's the special board meeting to discuss director
district.
I
districts.
thought I saw something about August 22nd.
Yes, it was the 23rd, and then at the July meeting, it was moved to the 16th.
Next
The
Tuesday.
redistricting.
Yes.
Right.
Because the 23rd didn't work.
It's next week.
Yes, it's next
Next
Tuesday.
That's what I was like.
Yeah, that's already, yes, that's already,
Already.
that is already.
August.
Anyone want to move that?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Other than B3, we're through the action items. Should we go into the reports?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.,
9:46.
9:46, okay.
August 16th at 10 a.m.
Yes,
Oh,
August 16th,
yes.
10 a.m.
Uh,
is the special meeting.
The engineering report. Scott, you're up.
Okay, so you have my report, a couple things to update.
The property owner of the Buffalo Creek project did contact us, and we are working to send them the cost of a line extension to that property. I probably want to discuss it in executive session if you want to go further with that, but that's where we are currently with that project. The fiber project, the contractor doing the phase 2 of the project is making decent progress. They will probably finish a little bit late unless they get more manpower in. But they are making good enough progress that I'm not concerned about that project being finished. Phase 1 contractor we continue to struggle with, and we have talked to, or I've had Connexon talk to alternate contractors. In the event we need to bring somebody else in to try to get that project finished. I do not believe that their current proposed completion date is acceptable to Mountain Parks. Doesn't give us any time at all before winter to actually start making use of the project. And so we'd like to find an option to get that project done. So
Scott, who's stringing it at 34, which contract?
that's ADB, the phase 1 contractor. All of the stringing crews are subcontractors to them. The actual contractor or subcontractor's name is Western Scope.
Yeah, it seems like there's different names on all the trucks up there. So, yeah.
Yep, that's the reason why.
Okay.
And that's the same on
Phase 2.
on phase 2. I think a good majority of those crews are also subcontractors. Any questions?
Any questions, if you have more? Or is it your- Just any questions on the
Any
fiber?
questions in general?
In general, the universal light tariff.
Mhm.
I wasn't quite clear, but are those, it says universal LED lights?
Yes,
Are those dark sky compliant?
they should be.
Yes. They are dark sky.
What else?
Scott, does it make sense though? If this guy's not getting on the phase 1, it's middle of August right now, to find somebody else, is that a possibility, or anyone interested to do that at this late stage of game to get done by snowfall?
I'm currently having Connexon work with a couple of the or a couple other contractors. One of them happens to be the second low bidder on the phase 2 project. And I agree with you. If we're going to make this work, we're going to have to get a contract in place and get construction going by early September. They have about 25 miles, 25 to 27 miles to finish. And so I believe the contractor, I think the contractor on phase 2, that they have is about 6 miles. So that could be 4 to 5 if you got somebody.
I think it probably could get done in reality.
They could.
Yeah, push, but you go.
They could, but if we wait too long, you're right, it'll be too late. But this situation is dragged on. I mean, we have given this contractor, I've been patient with them. They were supposed to finish this job in 60 days or 60 to 90 days after starting construction in the fall of last year. We're way beyond.
And ours is considered in the hot space, correct?
No, we are not.
But it's pretty close, it looks pretty high, at least for the
Yeah,
rest.
that's one concern that we have with that. One concern that we have with the subcontractor that's doing the work between Granby and Hot Sulphur. Yeah, that's being addressed. We have any penalties? for not completing?
We do.
And what are the penalties?
But I think we should discuss this in executive session.
They're in the contract.
This universal streetlight rate, what did it go from to? Well, it didn't go from anything because it didn't exist before. It is, I believe, 14. Right?
Yeah.
Jessica, do you remember what it was on that?
It's a new type of light, and so we had to develop a rate based on the light because
I can check what it is.
we recoup
What
the
was
cost
the
of
old
the.
rate for streetlights as compared to this new? It was a little cheaper.
It was cheaper, but it was different. What we recoup in it is the cost of the fixture as well as the electric usage. And the other fixtures were different fixtures, and so they used a different amount of electricity as well as the fixtures had a different cost.
So it's not negative to non-partners?
No.
No.
We recoup the cost of the fixture as well as the electricity used when we new light.
And
It's an adjustable fixture so that we can adjust the brightness. Does that include the issue last month with East Grand School?
No, because those are LED lights, I believe, inside.
Indoors?
Yeah,
outside, I think, but I don't think they're street lights. I don't know.
no, they're lights that they own. So basically, these
It's
are
on there.
the ones that this tariff applies to are the actual street lights, the ones on the roads.
I thought that's what they were asking for.
No.
These are ones that aren't metered. I'm
That's
presuming.
correct.
I just re-forwarded that to you.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the tariffs, do we approve them?
You will.
Yeah, so we'll see this eventually.
Yeah, Jessica is gonna have that ready for the next meeting. If
Yeah.
it's too late to get it
That's
to this
fine.
meeting. That's 1452 per month is the rate. And a couple of things that we changed. Life of the fixture shortened. Experience. And the light fixture itself is more expensive. These indoor LED lights are subject to rebate from Tri-State, correct?
Yes, and
So we're buying the lights and they're gonna
and
apply
then
with the
no,
rebate.
we get the rebate.
We get the
Yeah. So with the request last month, the request was 5,000 and change. And we were going to get a rebate of $1,700 or more. Basically, we pay for the lights and then we get the rebate.
Scott, number 3 there, the cloud computing site, was that the cyber or the cryptocurrency?
That is the same company doing the cryptocurrency, but the cloud computing site was going to be cloud computing, not cryptocurrency.
Okay.
But this is the same company that's doing the cryptocurrency.
Okay. And then the staker, is that outside contracts? Outside stakers or
No,
in-house?
This is to hire an in-house person. Job offer should be going out today.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions? Left me off easy today.
Okay, Adam.
All right, so I guess a couple things to add since we put this report together. I'll add those in a minute. I do want to just kind of highlight, we had some pretty big storms roll through Greene County and up in Jackson County also. The guys did a really good job just keeping the outages to a short period of time and working in some difficult weather. So really appreciate that from the guys in amongst just really getting busy again with construction season. You know, everybody's starting to feel the pinch on winter's not too far off. So the guys are really getting busy. We're looking at maybe needing to get a little bit more contractors in here to stay up with it. That way, we're not putting so much pressure on our guys. Highway 125, as Adam White said, that is sessions mobilized on Monday. As far as I know, they are big. Scott and I are probably going to go check on them hopefully this afternoon. So that's great news. Real concerned about these storms and rain coming through for them up there, just their safety. So hopefully, who would ever thought we might be hoping for some dry weather, but I am hoping for some drier weather so we can get that conduit in up there and get that CIC that we got laying on top of the ground taken care of up there. That would be a big thing for us to get that taken care of this fall. We had, since I did this report, I had one of our substation techs put in his notice that resigned. So we'll currently we'll be posting that for sub-tech. We have put a job offer out for a lineman position open internally, and he accepted it. We should be getting a guy going here in a couple weeks for that position. So been real busy with interviewing people and trying to backfill positions. We've been interviewing for backfilling Leah's position also, dispatch. I've yet to make a decision on that, but we're hoping here within the next couple of weeks to get that sorted out. And, that's kind of all I got. I got the information we were talking about earlier about Mesa Hotline School. I can bring that up later, or I can talk about it now. So Mesa Hotline School, the property itself is owned by Community College Mesa, but all the material and it's all donated by co-ops around the state supporting that school. So they let us use the property for our 2 weeks of training in the spring, and we let them use poles and wire and stuff like that throughout the year. That's to support that school. So it's kind of a give and take, when our guys go down there and instruct that class for whether it be hot work or underground, we're also teaching the students that are coming out of that school. So it's kind of what we were talking about earlier about, supporting kids going to line school. It's just kind of even a further point of that with Mount Park supporting that school. We want a hand in training these linemen that are coming out of that school, and we want to be training the guys we send to that school. It's they only have limited funds. It's the better equipment and the more modern equipment we can get down there for them. It really helps better training. So that's a little bit of an update down there.
So the property they're moving to is owned by Mesa.
That's
College.
correct.
Okay.
Mesa was leasing the property they're at now. And it's taken a long time to move over there because they've waited for co-ops to donate poles and wire, build a new yard over there. But it's finally getting close, but they always need more material and poles to further strength.
Maybe we'll have some CIC we can.
Maybe. Yeah.
When did we last donate? Is it a yearly deal or every 10 years, every 5 years?
I do not know that.
Typically, it's when they make requests for specific things, and when we were over there last year or earlier this year, they made a request for some materials and they put out a list, and the co-ops look at the list and find things that they have that they can donate.
And we send guys once a year.
We do, yeah. So we make it mandatory for all apprentice linemen to go down there and get at least the 4 years of, it's a different class. Each year you go down there, different stages, like they got beginner gloving work, and you got gloving 2, which is more experienced, stringing and tensioning, and then there's like underground classes, apparatus classes. We try to get all of our guys through all those classes, and once they're journeyman linemen, you're experienced, we'd like to have those guys get back and go start training people. I found through my years down there that sometimes you learn just as much going down there and teaching other people as I did going through those classes. And it's just a great networking thing for linemen to go down there and talk to them. And I can honestly say we've ended up hiring people from people we know down there just with that networking. It's something we're pretty passionate about as a line crew, just to keep that going because it's a great training venue for us. And actually, Nate Town just got on the board for the hotline school. So we'd like to keep supporting it.
Is the official name of the program the Hotline School?
Mesa Hotline School.
Okay.
Is this an appropriate time to make a motion?
I
Or should
think we should
till
wait till
later?
emergency business, but
Okay.
I want you to remember how you feel about this when you get to
Yeah.
emergency business.
And Adam, this year, for the 2 weeks, how many instructors did we send out?
I probably am gonna get this wrong, but I want to say we probably sent 6 to 7 instructors down there between the 2 weeks. And our guys, it was a various of us teaching underground to us teaching the experienced gloving to us teaching the brand new guys, like gloving one, the school students. That was usually where my passion was just I loved teaching the brand new people, the kids coming out of school, because that's the next generation. So that's usually where I would be if I was down there. But yeah, we got a ton of knowledge here at Mountain Parks, and getting that, helping that next generation of linemen is a big deal. So,
If we do approve this donation, does it come out of general funds or the education fund?
Would come out of the, well, I would think it could come out of the education fund as long as it needs to. But that would,
It's not-
Bryson might have to look at that.
I mean, if our
People are
employees
going
go down there, they're
benefit.
residents. So they meet the residents. Because I
Well-
heard the number that we have 170,000 that was extra this year.
Yeah, well, more than,
So
more than.
More
we
than
have
the
in
normal
past, yeah.
amount that is transferred.
Right. So
So-
food for thought
Yeah.
for later.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, are you done?
I am done, unless somebody's got any questions, that's all I have.
Well, I was driving right behind the pole yard coming back from Habitat that day of the storm. And it was sunny here, sunny at the top of Red Dirt Hill, and there was just a wall of darkness with the lightning coming down both sides. And I pulled into the pole yard, or rode 5 to 50 there to go home, and pulled over for the fire trucks. And the Mountain Parks guys were right behind them.
Yep. So that was,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give Leah some kudos on that. So the fire department arrived on that scene first.
Yeah.
We didn't have anybody there yet. The actual outage, we opened up the substation from SCADA in the office here because we were concerned there was wires on the ground or whatnot there. So,
Yeah.
we always tell our people if there's any doubt, any one of us has the authorization to say, hey, you need to open something up. And that could be a little daunting, that's a lot of people on that circuit. And she made that call and did it and kept everybody safe. And that was the right decision. So good job to Leah. I would add on those storms, whoever says lightning doesn't strike twice. Because, we had a couple transformers that we fixed them one day and a day later they got hit again. And it was actually 2 different transformers. So that's,
We need like a electricity pole there or something? How do we deal with that?
I think it was just a coincidence. Our system is a well-grounded system. We got arresters on stuff. It just, it hit the same exact place.
Yeah. Well, your trucks can keep up with the fire trucks, so I guess that's a good sign.
Yes, we do our best.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Finance report.
The report is in the packet. I'll attempt to answer any questions you might have. The one thing that I want to make sure the board is aware of is we continue to spend an incredible amount of time with FEMA. And as of today, we have gotten 0 back. Every time they say that they're ready to disperse, they seem to come up with another question. And we keep providing information to them and they keep wanting more. So the suggestion from, I believe they are the state folks or the contractors for the state. So you have FEMA, the state, and then contractors for the state that review the FEMA stuff. They said that it could be 4 months before we actually see money. So if we are lucky, we will see some of this money before the end of this year.
Don't cross your fingers.
Well, I would say don't hold your breath because you will definitely pass out. That it's the process, and I, of course, took over as the lead for Stacy, and she said, just don't make them mad because it'll get worse. And I said, I'm not sure that it could get any worse. But
So are these the same people we want to make sure they're like making sure we have resource adequacy? Isn't this the same? No.
it's
FEMA, so
they
this would be
work for the state, but
No, I meant just,
the FEMA people know it would be FERC. So starts with the same 2 letters and with 2 different letters.
anyway.
So it's at the state and we're negotiating with the state auditors?
We are not negotiating with them. We are meeting with them every week to find out what it is they want to ask for the next week. FEMA obligated the money, which then sent it to the state. The state obligated the money, which then they hired the contractors to review the information. So you basically sent the information to FEMA, you sent the same information to the state, you sent the same information to the contractor, and it is just kind of in a black hole.
Making sure that you're not defrauding.
But the state has the money.
Yes.
How much money does it cost the government to give those funds out? It must be
I mean, if there's any indication of how long it takes, I'm guessing they're spending more money on processing than they're giving you out. But no one knows.
Any other questions on the finance?
I have one question on cost of purchase power.
Yes.
This year to date, last year budget, are we using more power, or is power more expensive to buy, or a combination? The 12 million, 14
The
million.
power is not more expensive to buy. We're buying more power.
Because our revenues are up as well.
Yes.
It's been a cooler year.
But also we could be having more of the demand component versus if we're hitting the peaks, our peaks are bigger, it's going to skew that too.
Okay, so then in terms of revenue, we're getting that back because we're selling more.
But it
Yes.
depends when we sell it. We need to sell 300 kilowatt hours off our peak period to make up for 1 kilowatt used on our peak period.
Okay.
So that's part of the reason we have the voluntary rate now where people can sign up and have a lower rate if it's off peak and a slightly higher on peak.
And there is a lag between when we get charged for the power and when we get the revenue, because they use it and then we bill, and then they have 25 days to pay. And so
Yeah.
it doesn't mesh and line up exactly.
With when Tri-State sends us their bill.
Okay. So that increase on line 3 then this year to date, is partly offset by revenue subject to the item you just mentioned.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
When was the July meeting?
that weekend.
Still have tri-state bill. Stand by.
Okay.
Can we can move on to the next report unless you have a question, and then Scott will get that information.
No, but sometimes just a historical again. I mean, maybe publicizing that in some capacity would help. It's, yeah, I mean, it trends pretty consistently on, I mean, that one does, I know, almost every year.
Right.
It's same with those big holiday Fridays. So if we can.
The peak's probably the same day as the maximum vehicles through Eisenhower Tunnel.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you might not hit the
Price.
second homeowners coming up that would care or
Maybe
know,
we
but
get a nice
we can.
light.
Go ahead, Scott.
July 2nd at 9:30 p.m.
9:30 p.m.
What time?
9:30 p.m. July 2nd.
It's already in bed.
Run your dishwasher.
All right. Next report, Joe.
So you all have my written report. I'll handle any questions that you have on that. One thing to add. There are no questions.
Mark brought that deal with Holy Cross up about these vans to control the meter. Didn't we get into that kind of a program initially when we switched to these new meters, that we were not having the data enough to, get users, but we have no ability to control a hot water heater or anything else on a member if they requested as of right now?
We don't have the ability. Tantalus, the system does. If we were to want to go that way to control hot water heaters, or they do have a section of their system that we could install or add.
But we didn't incorporate that initially.
We did not, no. I mean, the system, we don't have to buy anything, just the actual device, like the actual water heater device. And then I think there's a license fee, sort of Itron meter manufacturer to license that. It's called Zigbee communication. That would allow the meter to talk to the device that actually controls whatever the load is. It doesn't have to be a water heater, but it could be a water
So
heater.
the cost is what Mark mentioned, is the same amount as the meters, or?
No, it shouldn't be, but I
It should.
don't know.
No, because we won't have to buy one of those bands in order to do that. The equipment we have can do it.
That's
We
what
ju-
I was,
we
that's
just have-
what I thought
yeah,
initially.
But the communications has to be really good too. So that's why fiber to the home will open up the opportunity to do a lot of things. So if Liz has her Tesla plugged in, we could potentially draw on Liz's battery in order to help shave the peak.
Or at least stop charging.
But we have to have fiber to the home to accomplish all that.
You don't
We have
necessarily,
no way to do it through
yeah,
SCADA.
you don't necessarily have to, but the communications have to be really good, and most of the internet up here doesn't meet that
I
criteria.
might turn it off tomorrow instead of today now.
Yeah.
Given
The
my
meter,
service.
those commands though are priority commands through the metering system. So it operates the same way as outage notification operates. So they do like a metering data, interval data, usage data is a low priority command. Because if we get that data within the hour or two, chances are you're not gonna act on it. But outage notification, load control commands do take a higher priority through the system. So it's very doable. It's very possible.
So if we don't get people to accept and take our fiber,
Well, it doesn't have to
we
be
have
our
no
fiber,
control
it could be
over it.
anybody's, but currently, no, we don't control those devices.
is
But
that something in the future that we're
We will-
looking at or?
yes,
are looking to deploy at some point?
yes.
What
And-
time frame?
That's your thing.
It will depend on when the fiber is actually. The backbone will be in, and we'll be able to utilize that. But the actual fiber to the home is going to be the real driver for the ability to control a lot of these devices.
Picking up on what Carl said, though, we
20
have a
years.
lot of houses and homes and condos that do have good internet right now, especially in some of our towns. And we used to have a water heater load control program that was doing the peak shaving. And, you know, Rob
But
would
it
report out
wasn't-
on it and it was saving us money. So what happened?
So-
Why did we
So
kill
a
that?
couple things, I had one of those contests and it was peak shaving, but it wasn't, I was controlling it rather than Chris, I believe. You could override it. And I still use it. But I would say a couple things. One, this discussion, we have some uncertainty regarding it because if we control load, it's questionable whether or not we have the ability to, under policy 115, and whether we will have to pay tri-state for that load that we've controlled. So I'll just throw that out there. Holy Cross doesn't have that issue.
Right, because they're
Because they're Excel. So whether or not aggregated load control, the financial, the system benefits are huge for tri-state. If their co-ops would do this, but whether or not the policies and the financial incentives are set up so that it makes sense for co-ops to spend money on it, who knows?
Yeah, and to Liz's point, those load control devices were like Ron Popeil, set it, forget it.
Yeah.
And so you basically programmed it to do things that you wanted it to do. But as Liz said, the homeowner could override that. And so it wasn't necessarily working the way that it was intended.
Other thing that I will say, because I have installed a number of devices in my home, is that Joe will probably remember this. As the Ukrainian war started, there was an unusual announcement by the US government noting that they had taken proactive actions, gone into various companies and changed things. A number of the devices that I had in my house no longer worked after that, which made me think that they were susceptible to whatever the government was concerned about. So when we have devices like this, we're going to have to be super, super cautious about it.
And that's exactly why we don't install remote disconnect meters on
Right.
infrastructure. So we have a policy in metering where we don't want anybody to be able to shut Verizon off or CDOT road sign off if they should get access to Tantalus. I don't want that meter to be operable remotely.
So Joe, none of the
What
load
plans?
control can happen over the RF mesh network.
Yes, they have provisions for it. As a matter of fact, Tantalus, I think it was 2 years ago, they bought a company that specializes in load control and load management, load control. I can't think of the name of the company. They bought a company that does that to enhance their capabilities.
The one thing challenge for us too is our tariff doesn't really address some of the concerns at this point. You know, like with La Plata, you know, how much they're working on the tariff of how much they pay when they actually draw off of the bus's battery. And our tariff doesn't do that. And one of the reasons is that we don't do much in the way of load control.
And we just have, it's a big, I'm all with Carl. I mean, I think it'd be great to be able to do all this stuff, but the implementation is going to take a long time. Thinking about the costs and the tariff and our relationship with Tri-State or whoever, it's going to take time. And by the time we figure that all out, there'll be another way to do it. So,
Well, possibly, but that's in my mind, the way of the future. If we don't get on it or start thinking about it, that's why I said, what's the timeline on this? But,
what's,
you know, if we don't start thinking about this and setting up a possible program or ways to do it, then we're going to be playing catch up.
just a quick question to you, Carl. A distributed energy resources and demand side management study is being done by Tri-State, I think, by Regis Group. And I think that's supposed to be back in January. Do you have any insights on? I mean,
He hasn't come up with anything yet, but yes, that's what he was charged for, to come up with a program.
and would-
He did it at San Isabel through the, what the hell was the name of that program? I But it turned out that that was what was it? I quoted that at one time, like 70% of their co-op's margins came
Right.
From shaving.
from imbalance. Was
Well,
that-
actually, there, a lot of the money came from the
Oh,
financing
yeah,
of the
the finance
projects
of the
that they did.
project.
is that
I mean, they
where-
were very good
Right.
at marketing it, and
They did insulation and.
yes,
house
they were
upgrades.
doing all kinds of things.
But that should be on the, in the future, is what his recommendations are in his programs.
Right, but do you get the feeling that that's something that Tri-State would offer its members, or that Tri-State expects its members to develop those programs on their own?
I would think that it would have to come, the Tri-State would offer the program, not to require members to.
Well, not required, but allowed.
No, but the Tri-State did reach out as part of that study, and they're going to have to develop their side of it. It's kind of the chicken and the egg. Do they develop the program first, and then we create on our side if we want to do it, or do we do it and then see if it fits what they develop? And I think that's one of the challenges. You know, there have been issues in the past with some of the co-op members and Tri-State where they do something and then, you know, later find out that, okay, that's not the way Tri-State wants it, and then they get into big fights over it. Not naming any names, but that's one of the challenges. So I think that what we need to do is see how they're going to structure something, and then we determine whether or not that works for us.
But that should be coming.
Okay, right. Anything else?
Just have one more thing. So on Tuesday morning, we held a cybersecurity tabletop exercise here. We involved stakeholders from all the departments. This is the first one of a few we're going to hold. This first one, we focused on just planning the scenario with various stakeholders and how they would continue operating business or the business if we had no computers. We modeled it after the public facts of the DMEA cyber event. Changed a few things to make it fit our environment, but we modeled that. And I think the participation was pretty good. Pretty much all the managers that are in this room were there, and it got them thinking. I got several comments afterwards about, wow, what would we do if we had no, I mean, everything from payroll, vendors. I mean, yeah, we could write checks, but do we have checks? Things like that. So it was a little bit of an eye-opening experience, but good. And the next one we'll hold, we'll probably move on to more the remediation and things like that that will happen in an event. But just wanted to tell everybody that that's happening, and more to come.
Are you gonna go be involved with the
Cyber Force
not RESAP, but CSAP?
recap.
Recap,
Yeah.
you'll be going to other
Yeah,
places as well.
well, they're still very young. Like, they don't really even know what we're going to look for yet. They said that basically the first round was, do you have a cyber policy, and there are like three things that are going to check.
Risk assessment.
Risk assessment. There are three things you passed.
To start.
Yeah.
Which, and part of that is driven by federated or other insurance that you might get for cybersecurity. You know, a few years ago, it was like, do you want this? Check the box. And they would give it to you. Well, they would sell it to you. Last year, it was, you know, do you want this? Yes. Okay. Have you done these things? And, you know, one of them was multi-factor authentication. One of them was, you know, having to do updates and those kinds of things. And we did. And so they would sell it to us. If we didn't, they might still sell it to us, but it was going to cost a whole lot more. And the rate for cyber insurance is going up as well. So the more you do, the more pressure it puts on the rate to stay where it is as opposed to increasing.
That we were also warned that the next application will be multi-pages long. The representative from Federated gave his little spiel and said, you know, I'm expected to get much more lengthy and much more involved next time. But yeah, I tend to participate. Currently, there are only 3 that are CRA certified to do these. We asked what it took to get certified and they didn't know. So it's coming, but it's pretty young and where it is.
And insurance companies tend to hate to have to pay things. So you pay if they're not going to have to pay for anything. And when they have to start paying, then you pay more. This might be a good time to take a break.
Yeah, I have one question. Oh, go ahead.
I have
Carl.
one question
Go
too.
ahead.
I noticed your last bullet here, that no before.
Yes.
I get emails from that and I've been wiping them off because they, well, truthfully, because
Well,
they
they're
originate, it says
right.
originates from outside MPE.
Well,
So
that's
is it
good.
something I need to be looking at?
So yes, so I don't remember how long ago it was, but we were asked to include the board in those tests and trainings. So we've been sending them. You skew our statistics a little bit, but it's getting better.
What they typically are doing now is somebody from the IT department will send out, as typically Tori,
Yeah.
sends out an email and says, you're going to get a know before email with required training.
Yeah.
And
I must not have ever got it because,
Sometimes she does forget that we tried to create a little.
well, I don't
procedure.
remember being notified that I should be looking at this, but I've been wiping them off.
yes.
Oh, you have it?
Well,
And
Carl, the first one I got, I emailed Joe and said, is this a scam?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, now it
Because I thought
sounds-
it was too.
I thought he went fishing.
But that is, yes, those are, we are now including the board in those, and so watch them. And some of them are overly simple, but some of them offer good information.
the last one was on phone scams, and it took about 5 minutes.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. I had the same question, Carl, but one of the first things that they teach you is, making sure that the email really came from know before.
Mhm.
So, I have another question. We get this, something from securityinfowatch.com. Is that something you guys set up or not? Okay. I
I'm
never
sure.
clicked on those, so.
I'm sure they just scanned our emails and blasted to everyone.
Okay, because I have no idea.
It may not be malicious in any way. It's probably a sales call. More than anything, but-
Oh, it's an article that featured stories. In fact, how to respond and recover from an active shooter event. So I never have clicked on any of the links. Nope, I haven't
No,
clicked
she
on them.
sends emails and says, I've got something, should I do this
I say, Mark's sick of me.
or delete it?
Yeah.
And
The ones I've deleted are from manager@mpei.com.
Or
we don't
HR.
have a manager at MPEI.
No,
If you get an email from somebody here, it's going to have their name.
right.
We don't have HR.
I was
at
just looking at
MPEI
HR.
Or IT.
Well, then
Those-
you're
those are the ones they
skewing
like
the
to use.
results. Okay, let's
Because
take a break.
Would I be able to do my report
Oh,
before the break?
Yeah, I think, can we?
Yes,
Okay,
because
let's go.
she has
Let's
a
go.
commitment.
Sorry.
Okay, so you have my report in front of you. Couple updates. We received the Employers Council Compensation and Benefits Survey results this weekend. We discussed with the management team this week, and Mark and I are working on getting the updated job family ranges out to supervisors and managers. So last time we talked a little bit about some of our challenges with retention and recruitment, so we're keeping that in mind as well as inflation as we look at all these items for 2023. Any questions on that? Our new HR software philosophy is live for the company. We will start evaluation of the system in 2 weeks. We are setting up small group trainings for that. And then compensation recommendations for each team will be due by September 15th. So that's similar to the schedule that we've had in the past. And then we'll start preparing the labor budget for the treasurer board meeting. Schedule for all that. I think that's all I had to add. Does Does anyone have any questions on my report?
I just had one little question on 4C, the telecommuting policy. We talked about that at length last month. And the certain positions, for instance, the GIS or something like that, 100% remote. But
We have not
You're s-
implemented it yet
yeah,
because we are still, we're working with Employers Council, which is a HR consultant. And because there are some issues with 100% remote policy that we need to address before we implement the policy.
okay. Was the next sentence was the thinking that if you had 100% remote position or close to it, that you would also be required to live within 200 miles.
That's the opening gambit. And,
Okay.
because we believe that within 200 miles of us, the population centers of the state
Front range.
are covered.
Yeah.
And that might be workable. And we've seen that it did work at another co-op. Now,
Okay.
whether or not that's what it ends up being, we don't know yet.
So that's a way to have your remote person also be a little more available to drive up for the day or
Right. So
overnight meeting. or-
we talked about that there can be some mandatory things that we need them to be here for.
Yeah.
And so if they happen to live in Florida, that would be difficult.
And that seems like a nice compromise, versus somebody 3 states away.
Yes.
So eventually we'll,
You will have a policy.
an updated policy.
Yeah.
We have a policy currently, right?
We do.
And so, but this is updating that policy.
It will, the new policy is going to be different.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions,
Thank you.
comments? Okay, let's get get Rob out of here too. Member relations.
Yes, good morning. So I kind of add a little short additional facts that might help in your discussion about load control. Back and looked at our final load control report. We had 18 water meter load control devices, and we batted 11 out of 12 successfully controlling shooting the peak by about 0.4, which had a value less than $8 per water meter. 11 out of the 12 months, so we did pretty well with that. But with that, we had people self-installing the majority of them, and just a handful of them we paid to install those water heaters ourselves. We had willing participants. We did not offer an incentive. We probably need to a program. And what we found out is the payback given those variables on the parks was about years. And the product was warranted for 2 years. So that was a little bit of pause on that. The other thing we noticed is there was a $5,000 software fee to manage that. And if we expanded our load control devices to include smart thermostats and other devices, that accomplish that. So there were some things that we still had to figure out to make that work. But one of the other factors that made us recommend to the board not expanding the program at that time was the fact that of the history of sort of tri-state with these programs, most consumers view, a lot of employees view their wholesale rate structure as a rate signal when it costs them to sell us the power. And historically, what we've learned is other co-ops that have successful large load control programs, the effect of that means they're collecting less revenue from that co-op that they're depending on. And then we've seen them switch rates and their rate structure. And a lot of these load control programs really rely on you having a fixed rate structure with certain times and cost signals so that you can recoup your investment costs for the program over multiple years. So I think what Carl was talking about with Red Rudolph, and we've always talked to Tri-State about, we'd really like to see Tri-State do a load control program. reflected their costs of how they sell wholesale power, and then tries to push the button, and the whole system would realize the savings, but historically, that's not how they've done things. I don't know if it's helpful, but that's kind of what I remember about.
Well, one more question following up on that. So my recollection was that the water heater control technologies were retrofits to essentially make a quote unquote dumb water heater smart.
They were.
And that at one point in time, Mountain Parks used to stock water heaters that local contractors could install. I mean, I know when I was looking for a water heater, I chose one that had an integrated load control or timing option on it, and it was a little bit more expensive. So just something to throw out there to consider, and maybe y'all have considered this. But if we decide in the future that we want to start inventorying water heaters again to encourage people to install those, maybe we could choose the ones that have that smart tech integrated in it so that we don't have to go retrofit things in the field, that it's, you know, right there.
We have the run of selling those marathon water heaters, and then their manufacturing process changed, and we were selling water heaters and having multiple people call a warranty on them and replace them, which created a little bit of a problem for us and dissatisfaction with our members, with Mountain Parks, because we had no control over the manufacturing process. We were in touch with the manufacturer, but we didn't have a resolution to fix them. So we had to make the hard choice and decide not to sell that brand of water heater anymore.
Yeah,
And
once bitten, twice shy, but you know, it could be a good opportunity.
in the future. And then the other thing that really plays into our low control thoughts is if we do approach a point where we have an alternate power supplier and it's an energy only rate, or the demand costs on the wholesale side comes down dramatically, any investment we would make into DSM that would be looking at a payback, not just a service to our members, that would kind of change all those economics. So
Yeah.
something to consider, and especially when we're looking at devices that our payback is beyond the warranty or residence. Anyway, hope that helps.
Yeah.
So this past month, we've been very busy with member events. This is kind of a busier time of season from annual meeting through the summer months, but we had our electric bike demo event that we worked with Two Pikes Bike Ramp, and they brought out 4 electric bikes, and it was a 2-hour event, and we had 63 people register for the event. And one interesting thing in their registration, we learned how they found out about our event. And so, you know, the memberships communication needs are changing. I think we're keeping up with it. And most of them found out about the event on social media or word of mouth. And we advertised in the paper. Fewer of them found out about it that way. Some of them, you know, happened to see it and drove by our sandwich board signs with the balloons and that kind of thing. Saw it on our website. But it was a really good event, I thought. And the Two Pines owner was pretty thrilled about the turnout. And I asked him afterwards, is this something you think you might want to do again? So yes, he'd like to do it again. But these kinds of events, whether it's the e-bike demo or the coffees we did earlier in the year, we're reaching new parts of our membership that don't show up to the annual meeting, probably don't come to a board meeting. They might not stop in our lobby. So I'm really valuing the conversations we're having with them. It leads us to be able to talk to them about rebates and our program operation of them. We're doing a hardening our system after the fire. So really valuable conversations. And I just wanted to point that out. You'll see in my report, we did do the National Night Out, part of the Gravity Police Department up there in here at Soccer Dome last week. And then we had our fair booth at the Kremlin Fair this past weekend. So we have and I tried to add some more analytics in there in addition to these surveys that we do online or member comments. We do get online reviews and we do solicit those. Although we don't have critical mass of them, we do value what people say about us online. And we're doing pretty well, I think, there as well. So with that, I will field any questions you might have.
Any questions for Rob?
Rob, did you see that Ford ratcheting up the price of their lightning?
I did not, but Adam tells me we might have our electric
Yeah, so there's a chance we might see it this fall, actually, we actually are, got it all finalized and, obviously not forward to send it to us at this point.
They said if you had your order in, you wouldn't see a price bump going forward.
So we got a good price on it and, our charger, we had to actually order the charger before we could get the truck, so we got our charger coming. We had, Tri-State was actually nice and gave us one of their allocations. They were ordering 3 of them and they gave us one of their spots. So, I'm hopeful we're gonna see that truck this fall.
Does a third party install that charger or do you have to get
We can install it.
On
We're
that
also
note-
on the list for the Chevy version as well.
I have not heard any news on the Chevy like the Ford.
They're slightly behind in production, I believe.
On that note, if this bill passes, the IRA, it includes thousands of dollars for people to increase their wiring, for improve their panel capacity. So if you want to get wired up for a 2-way charger, for example, like I hopefully plan to do when I get my 150, there is additional funding available for that. And then the other thing, I don't know if we can benefit from it, but there are really big commercial tax incentives for qualified electric vehicles that count as commercial vehicles, like up to 40% in some cases. So if that turns out to be a direct pay option, I'm curious if we can take advantage of that.
Did you ever get your lightning?
No, they haven't given me a number yet, and they're raising the prices for everyone that doesn't have a delivery number. So
How does he get one?
They're
this fall and you've been in
commercial
it for 3
customers
years?
get them first. Yeah.
Yeah, utilities are giving preference.
Adam, is that gonna
Yeah.
be a pickup bed or a utility
I
bed
think
box?
it's just gonna be a pickup bed. I think we might put a shell on it, put some stuff in the back, but it's just gonna be a regular pickup bed.
Okay.
We're gonna use it, it's gonna be assigned to somebody as a fleet.
I think we're gonna have it be the line superintendent, Nate Town's truck. And then it'll be available for Rob to have it as electric vehicles. It's gonna come with the generator option where it can power up the house if it needs to. Yeah, we're excited to see
Shave our
it.
peak.
Maybe. Yeah.
Carl can control it.
Kristen will let you test drive.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Bills for payment. Everybody go through them? Any questions, concerns? About credit cards? Okay, now we should take a break maybe before board open forum.
Yeah, and lunch will be here at noon. And in the fleet garage, so it's 10:45 right now.
Okay, so, yeah, let's see, if we can take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 5:11. Board open forum and associated reports. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. Mark stole all my thunder.
I wasn't even there for the rest of the board meeting.
Well, I just, probably the biggest thing that came out of there was that discussion about resource adequacy. I think we covered that enough, but we'll see what happens with Excel. Pushes a bill through or not. But we did focus on CRA's core mission. Speaking of core, so core electric dropped out CRA, and they were big, that was about $100,000 to the budget for CRA. So CRA wanted to make sure that they're doing what we want them to be doing. So they, we had a discussion about those things. And really, they didn't change too much. I mean, you were there for that, Mark. I mean, it's education, safety, communication, legislative affairs, and then they're adding stuff like the broadband broadband support for one, then the cybersecurity, that reset function. Recap. So
But Jeff told me I couldn't talk to him because he thought I was gonna upset him.
So, I mean, everybody wants those core things to continue. There's a good talk around those. As far as the legislative thing, was it last year when the bill came out? It's like an over bill where if you hit a utility truck with its orange lights on. Yes. So it makes it a class 5 felony if you kill somebody. And so there's a loophole in that, and it happened down, I think, at the Indian reservation down south in Colorado.
Yes.
A subcontractor was hit, struck, and killed by a car, and wasn't covered under that law. So we're gonna try to close that loophole, make sure that those folks are covered, because we have, subcontractors out in the field right now for us. So I think it's important. They're included in that mix, and then they want to. CRA also wants to make the National Lineman's Recognition Day. I'm not probably saying that right. They want to make that a consistent day through a state resolution.
Yeah, because the state day is one day, the federal day is a different.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get a bill through that will recognize our linemen officially once a year through the state. So that's about it.
Carl?
Well, you got the tri-state board report from Dwayne and Tim. I sent it to Mark, and I think he sent it on. A few highlights that I'll hit. Otherwise, most of the information's in that. Ken Rife, last meeting will be October 1st. This was his last in-person meeting because the September meeting with Tri-State is over the phone. And then I covered about Dwayne meeting with the Western Governors Conference. Intermountain gave XL notice they're leaving, and they're talking to Tri-State right now because of United's possible departure. They are seeing some excess generation there that they might take advantage of. So there's talks about joining Tri-State. And then this ESG report, environmental, social, and governance report, I think was in the packet or the highlights that Mark said to you. If anybody's interested in a hard copy, well, I'm sure Mark can get them. Tri-State is one of the only few G&Ts that are doing this, but it's being asked for by creditors and banks and everything else to borrow money because of the initiative to not lend to fossil fuel generation or et cetera, et cetera. But Tri-State is doing the report. And they brought up the talk of selling the headquarters building at Tri-State. Figured the value was $50 million. and then possibly leasing it back. Also talk about just keeping it, maybe leasing some space to someone else because of the cut down the personnel and cost savings. The directors there at the meeting put a kibosh on selling it. Said no way, so that's off the table, but leasing, they're gonna look into. And there's going to be a rate increase. That's going to be inevitable. Due to fuel costs and the supply chain, inflation, all these issues. Some of the directors brought up that they want to see it done right away, not wait. But legal department advised us that we can't have a rate increase or a rate change until the rate committee gets done and the September 23 filing is completed. So there's no way that we'll have a rate increase the rest of this year or most likely 2023 either, but there will be a rate increase at some point in time. And they pointed out that most G&Ts across the country are having rate increase because of fuel costs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's about the only highlights that otherwise everything else is in that board report.
Western United didn't have anything like this.
No, it's coming up this month, and you should have gotten something.
I have not seen a notification on this, but
Okay.
I'm on their list as
Well,
particular placement.
we'll make sure you get.
I'll get with you.
And it's a fish fry or something.
Yeah,
It is their fish fry, yes.
okay, the rate design committee met, and it was a lively start to the meeting. One committee member asked the chair to remove the United and Northwest Public Power reps on the committee. So that started things off well. Things settled down. Tim Williams, one of the Tri-State Councils, reaffirmed the uncertainties and complexities that impact designing the rate, mostly having to do with the FERC process and all the issues in front of FERC. One of the things that I think is probably most pertinent to Mountain Parks is there was a lot of discussion about direct assignment of transmission, which we have we don't really have that, but there's a lot of emphasis on direct assignment of third-party transmission service costs. And it's kind of unclear to me and probably Mark how these services would be evaluated. I'm sure that someone who's really expert at this could say how it's going to be evaluated, but I think it's something that once FERC rules on those 4 reserved issues, we need to understand how that will affect Mountain Parks and how Tri-State is interpreting that versus how FERC is required. It could have impact on us, so it's something to keep in mind, given that we have a number of subs that have third-party transmission running to them. There was a fair amount of discussion about whether or not there should be a rate for the co-ops that are served by Basin on the eastern side of the interconnect versus the western co-ops. That wasn't really settled. There was a discussion about how a rate without tilt, which we talked about before, would substantially increase the cost of demand and reduce the cost of energy. That's more like a rate that they think could get through FERC without, if FERC would agree to. Now, it might get protested by the folks that don't like it, but if they feel like it would meet the FERC principles. So that would be quite a shift in the demand and energy ratio that we have right now. Next Gen presented rate designs in a sort of a small change. Here's what you could do, and it'd be a small change. Here's medium changes, and here's things to do, and get a large change. Then at the end, we had polling, and it was pretty clear that the committee hasn't really coalesced around one approach. And then the last thing was the rate design will be, once it's designed, then there's going to be a rate increase that will be layered on top of that. Just to give you an idea of where we are with polling, one of the questions was, knowing that FERC may not approve a rate with tilt, if there are protests, do you still want to include a tilt with our efforts to justify the use of tilt? Or do you prefer filing a straight FERC rate with no tilt? 49% said file with tilt, 46% said no tilt, and 5% were undecided. So that gives you kind of an idea of where we are. There was some discussion about the rate increase. I think my understanding of that issue is the settlement said that Tri-State would charge a certain rate through that September 2023 period, and that's the rate they have to charge. Whether or not they can speed up, I don't see how they speed up the rate design committee, because the rate design committee is waiting for some of those FERC decisions, especially on the reserved issues, to try to decide how to design that rate. So, yeah, and then the Tri-State's goal is to submit that rate September 1st, 2023, and have it accepted with the condition of refund November 1st, 2023. So it will go into effect November 1st, 2023. So that's where we are with that.
And one thing was brought up at the meeting too, that Ken brought up, that if we go to a formula rate, that would probably eliminate the need for a rate increase, because the formula rate would take into account the fuel costs and all the excess costs that are hitting Tri-State and some of these GTs right now. But it's my understanding that the rate committee said no to a formula rate. Isn't that right or not?
Well, the rate committee is leery of a formula rate, and we haven't, so the discussion was more like, let's design the rate and we can talk later about whether or not it automatically ratchets up on as a formula rate or not. But they tried to put that on the side so that we could just maybe get the rate designed. But I would say there's skepticism about that, and I would say it would, what it does is it saves Tri-State the trouble of filing a rate increase with FERC and getting it approved. It doesn't mean that the rate won't increase. It'll just increase automatically or decrease, which is what they tried to.
It's similar to what happened in the winter storm with Excel and the $600 million.
Yeah.
That you'd have, if you incurred the $600 million, then it would be passed through automatically. And then, you know, so like I said, when we had this discussion before, we would need to do a similar kind of rate, because if it got passed through to us, we couldn't have the regulatory lag. We would put us out of business potentially.
And I
Some
believe the
customers
go ahead.
that saw their rates increase by $30 a month in Texas because of that kind of structure
Yeah.
where costs were just passed through. And that's per member, like residential member. Hope to God that would never happen here, but that's in my mind when I think about the risks of having formula rates.
Well, the 4 XL co-ops, their members saw significant increases because, to Mark's point, each one of those co-ops has a matching pass-through for the bill they receive from PSCO. And they saw those right away. Some co-ops, out of generosity, extended those and attempted to get in at the PUC to have the wholesale matter heard, but the PUC declined. So.
Yeah, I think some of them spread it over 2 years or up to 3 years. But, you know, even when you do that, like Kristen said, it can, if it's a big enough number, it can have a significant increase over that 2 or 3 year period.
And this one wasn't even 2 or 3 years. This is like a decade of increased
No, I know.
charges.
I want to say that Mountain or Grand Valley, that theirs is $10 a month for 3 years.
That's just from that one incident.
One incident, yes.
Okay,
Longer than that, I think.
Is it?
40,000
Yeah.
members.
all right.
And just to let the board know, Stacy just sent me a text and she's getting on the plane to Hawaii.
Rub it in, Stacy.
Any old business?
I did have,
Yeah.
yeah, one thing to report out. So because Liz was in the lovely rate design
Oh,
committee
that's
meeting,
right, yes.
she was unavailable to go to an event that was held Tuesday after the Senate passed the Inflation Reduction Act. The deal isn't done yet, but it's looking promising that it will pass. And so I was asked to fill in and speak about the potential benefits of some of the co-op provisions. So just to summarize those briefly, and hopefully if this does pass, we can go over the details a little bit more in our next meeting. But there was 9.7 that was due in large part to Tri-State's advocacy included in the bill to help cooperatives with stranded assets and to help cooperatives that are interested in transitioning to clean energy. There is also an extension of the renewable tax credits. So those were set to expire over the next couple of years. They've been extended for 10 years. There are a couple of options that people that invest in those can choose. One is a 30% tax credit that's payable potentially upfront when you invest in the system. And then another option is to receive over 10 years a $25 per megawatt hour credit for wind or solar. And then there's additional incentives if you source material within the United States and or hire people who pay higher prevailing wages. One of the biggest options or biggest things that our senators were touting is that they have eliminated the requirement that you have tax liability to take advantage of those tax credits. So nonprofits, including nonprofit electric cooperatives, us, are eligible to receive direct payment. So this potentially could mean that if we wanted, for instance, to do a community solar project, we wouldn't have to partner with someone who has tax liability and lease it back. There might be an option if this passes that if we invest in the project, we get that tax credit. So this could potentially be a game changer. There's also money to help fossil fuel facilities invest in carbon capture if they want to go that route. But this could be a big opportunity. It certainly would have financial implications for the entities that we're considering contracting with for energy supplies. So I'm not sure if we want to reopen negotiations, but it certainly, if it gets passed, would have a transformational effect on the affordability of clean energy deployment over the next decade. There's also a bunch of provisions for EVs and other stuff. I didn't talk about all of that because I was given literally 1 minute, so I just said nice things and thank you and acknowledge Tri-State's efforts. So just wanted to bring you all up to speed on that. And then 2 other quick things. I was nominated to potentially be a member of Colorado's new Energy Code Board. So this is the body that was established by Colorado law that's going to be advising local jurisdictions on energy codes. There's a new requirement that jurisdictions adopt one of the 3 latest energy codes. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, be happy to connect with you. That's it.
And, one other comment is Dwayne wasn't able to go to that.
He was also
He was busy with Ed Epry, so Lee reached out and so they kind of coordinated the Tri-State message. That was nice. Anyone else? Trailer lights, Mark? Okay. Little business, new business, emergency business. Okay, we had the request for the soccer team.
$634.50. 47 shirts at $13.50 per shirt. He had a slightly smaller number, and I'm guessing because he has 40 players on this, and he said there were 33.
I think, and this time he said some 584,
Yeah.
something like that. Does anyone, we just speak to this? We've heard Carl. We can speak again.
Do I want to speak again?
Or have you said your piece on it?
I've said my piece. I'm not going to vote for this because I don't think he's given us enough accountability and the need. And so I'm not in favor. That's my second speech.
Does anyone else have a thoughts on it? Before I give you my thought.
I would bet his budget is taken up by that busing and roughing pretty quickly. But
I don't know. He even said he doesn't know.
Well, this is first year. But I guess I would say this, I think pride in youth sports and being part of a group is really important. And we have done things like funding football helmets, not just because they're needed for brain protection, but because we think having a football team is part of growing up and learning. And we've donated to the Kremlin Shooting Club for their trailer because we think we should learn, have the opportunity to go out with other youth and learn things. And I feel like for me, these t-shirts are a cheap way to have people have athletes build pride in what they're doing and be part of something. So I would support something like this. If eventually it's every single year, yeah, maybe it's a problem. I would be more in favor of supporting equipment that's around for has a longer life, but I still think this is important. That's my take on it.
I'll make a motion to support this cause there for this year, whatever that dollar amount is.
What was it again?
500.
Yeah, well, he said 500. The request here says 634, but I think he said 517, which is probably the 7
Maybe not
players
to-
times the 1350, so less.
I'll second it with kind of a qualification that, to Carl's point, that so we don't get inundated with a lot of different requests, which most of the time it sounds like we've approved. That I'll second this, and I hope it passes, but also that we maybe update or streamline our education fund policy. That sounds like we're going to be discussing that at some point, that we have a little better way, rules or how we dole out the money so that, the next thing isn't socks or, jackets or this and that. And we don't, but I'm happy to second this motion for this, but qualified that we maybe try to do a little more thorough job on discussion of the education fund and policies, procedures, and so forth.
who's fielding the request? I know Stacy had a large part of fielding and
Stacy and Chris gets quite a few of the requests, especially if they come from the schools, they go through Chris.
so Chris is sort of the point person now that Stacy's gone, I guess.
Well, he was even when she was here, but yeah, he's the point person, and they typically come to me
Afterwards.
to decide whether or not we'll put them on the agenda.
Because I know she also told folks at times, like, I don't think that's appropriate request.
Yes.
So,
And even when that, I think we had one a couple months ago, and we shared with them that we thought that they should modify it because we didn't think it was going to go through. But we typically will leave it up to them and, letting them know that they may get nothing if they don't modify it.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
Carl, do you want that noted?
Pardon?
Do you want your opposition noted in the minutes?
Sure.
Okay. Do we want to,
The other one was the hotline.
oh
school.
yeah, the hotline school, I forgot that. I have to look, I noted that. Okay, the hotline school has requested $5,000, or
Well,
they haven't requested. We have listened to their needs and what other co-ops have decided, what at least one other co-op has decided to, how they've decided to support this move. And we're thinking,
And I'm recommending that we match that 5,000 that Grand Valley did.
Can this come out of the educational trust fund?
So,
Yes.
I think you have an argument, if anybody were to challenge you on that. I do think as part of this review of the educational fund processes, I think it would be good to look at your bylaw language just to make sure it aligns or is clear with your policy decision for what you want to use that fund for. But you have Mountain Parks employees attending this school, getting education at this school, so I don't see any issue with using the educational fund.
Do we need to quickly look at the bylaws? And
I've looked at them during the meeting,
so
so,
you're pretty comfortable there?
yep.
Do we want any further discussion, or I'm ready to make a motion?
You need a motion to discuss.
I'll make a motion that we spend, approve $5,000 out of the education fund for this purpose. Second.
all in favor?
Well, now,
Any
did you have any
discussion?
discussion
Any
that you wanted?
discussion? Any discussion? I looked around the room, I didn't see any.
The only discussion I'd have is this would be a great opportunity for an article in the Country Life.
Yes.
So if we could somehow make that happen, that would be
And
great.
Rob is noting that. And so we'll either put it in or I can put it in my column.
Right,
And I mean,
Picture
for
would
your
be great.
information, I mean, our linemen donate their time, but Mountain Parks is also donating their salaries, travel, room, all of that every time they go as well, so. It's
it's sort of I mean, I look at it as like, it's
Continuing education.
continuing education, and it's, to me, it's, it's part of having employees now, if you want to keep them.
Oh,
And
like Adam said, he takes more out of that than
Yeah.
teaching. He
Yeah.
learns himself.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Thanks for that reminder, Mark. Okay,
We have a need for
Mountain Park Services, we did talk, I think we have the minutes, don't we? Do we have the
Yes.
minutes?
Yes.
And-
And there's just.
Okay, so should we recess this one? You wanna-
Yeah.
you wanna have the- Okay. So do I need a motion to recess this one?
No, you can
It's
recess.
just recessing. Go ahead, Jason.
All right, so I'm the new president of Mountain Park Services. Today is August 11th. We have a quorum present. And we have two items on the agenda. The first is approving the minutes from February and then also June 9th, which had our election on there, I believe. So any questions, or did everyone read the minutes? Everyone was able to find those as a separate tab on their
Yes,
device.
where was it?
It's-
did
If you
see
click
them.
on August
Uh,
at the top,
Up again?
I think you're gonna have to reload your.
Yeah, maybe mine didn't reload. I
If
thought I
you,
had
if you,
it.
where it says August 2022, if you touch that, then there is right below it, it says August 22 MPSI.
No, I'm not.
And then you will see
Oh, there it
the
is.
minutes there. Okay. got it.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from February 10th.
Oh, goodness. Dated.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Yeah.
All right, and then June 9th, meeting minutes, which was our election of officers primarily.
Move to approve the June 9th special meeting of the Mountain Park Services Board.
Okay. Please, got the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Want to Change it? All those in favor? Any other things that we need to discuss, Mark?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, can we get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? It's you.
All in favor?
It's you.
2 months now, it's just running.
I know. Oh, Jesus.
All right, we'll adjourn.
Elbow me. Okay, Mark, how do you want to handle this next? We've got probably another,
Yeah, we have a half an
Half
hour. If you want to make the motion to go into executive session, you have the list of items there. We
Right.
added the fiduciary duty presentation, discussion of B3 for legal advice, and then the Winter Park land.
okay.
And I just had a general question about legal.
Sorry, I didn't get that one.
I can,
Okay, and I got one as well. So can I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss all those items listed and on the agenda is
So moved.
all in favor? Oops, I need a second.
I'll say.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I need to know who made the motions.
Carl made the motion and it was seconded by Jeff.
Okay, so we need to